right, so I think we've got Jim on. Yep. And we're all here, so welcome. Thanks so much for coming. Strategic Planning. I'm going to just welcome our guest, Sean Evans, correct? Meridian Chamber.
Correct.
Okay. And Connie Miller, I think you all have the opportunity to speak with her. And I'm sorry, I forget your name.
This is Marlene. I'll introduce. This is Marlene Robinson. Marlene is here she helps me with taking notes so I can really lead a great robust discussion without trying to capture all of your comments at the same time. So welcome, Marlene. I'm glad you're here to help.
So Connie, you can
All
take
right.
it.
So I guess just want to say thank you for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure getting to know all of you. We had some great discussion in our interviews. So I think this is going to be a great time together. If we stay very focused on what next, build on our strengths, keep doing some of the great things we're doing, and then really launch into really thinking innovatively, as well as how do we overcome some of our obstacles. Every business and association has obstacles. We have our own as well. And so I think, first of all, I just want to say thanks for the wonderful open dialogue that we had with each of you. I've got some great insight, a lot of common themes. So you definitely are communicating well as a group, and I think we have some fun brainstorming to do today as well. So we'll just kick right off into some of the comments and feedback that we got through the interviews. And then we have a great time today of what do we do with this information that you've all shared. So thanks for the opportunity and taking your time today. So real quickly, some agenda, just housekeeping. I didn't know if everyone knew, for example, where the restrooms were and everything, but I think you're all comfortable here. So we will have a break. We'll time it based on where we're at in the agenda, as well as your needs. So we're going to review the mission. Every good strategic planning session should make sure we go back to our core. Who are we? Why are we here? What's our purpose? So we'll spend a little bit of time on that. That hasn't changed for a while, so I think we'll probably be all in sync, but we should at least make sure everything that we're thinking about today is tied to our value and our purpose and our mission. And then I'm going to go through the themes from our interviews together, and we'll process those. And then we're going to have a great group think as well, which is just discussing the ideas that came out of that, and also what are new ideas we can think of to move forward. But also some of the things are seeking to understand. Okay, someone shared this perspective. Tell us more about that so we can do something with it and make some good decisions. And then, of course, the fun part is how to prioritize all the great ideas that we come up with, because that's, we're going to come up with some neat things. And so that's a really good discussion about what's the resource allocation, the time, talent, and treasure needs to be able to step into some of these things. And then, of course, what's our next step? And then certainly we'll have a fun interactive time at lunch. So any questions just in general about the agenda? I'm going to move over here, Kristen, so I can kind of see you as well. So that's a little bit of our agenda. Any questions about? Okay, let's kick right off a little bit. So today, organizations that do strategic planning are always more successful in general. That's the way it works. It's a mindset. It's a culture of we care about working on our business and on our association. So we're going to have a lot of this thinking time. I guarantee all of you have you put some good thought into before we even started doing our interviews, but also the team has some great insight as well. And today we're here to try to create a plan on, so we're all kind of going down the road together, we're collaborating together. And then in the end, we kind of turn that plan over. The board ensures we have the right resources and to be able to give it to the staff to kind of follow up and execute. So that's kind of the process that is important in strategic planning. So overall, I really want to just talk about our overall direction and review as a group our values. You have great values. So of course, we want to make sure everything we do has integrity. And that's integrity in even what we talk about, even what we bring to the table, the facts we bring to the table, all of those things. Excellence, you're going to see in one of your strengths, many of you brought up one of your strengths is just this attitude of excellence and great service. And so I think that that's, you're living that for sure. And then of course, respect to all and teamwork. You're also going to see in one of your strengths that the board, you rated your pretty high on a high functioning board. And I would agree based on the comments that you are that as well. And of course, we all need to be working together. So teamwork, this is a team, right? And we need input from everyone today to be able to make a great session. Our purpose is to provide places for our community to prosper. What a great purpose. And so many of your ideas are, how do we keep doing that? How do we find new opportunities that are really exciting to be able to prosper? And then of course, our vision. Great vision statement. The Greater Boise Auditorium District will be the community's partner, premier provider of public gathering places. Our collection of distinct high quality spaces will be essential to our community's ability to engage and prosper. And then our mission, which is to develop spaces for community engagement that facilitate the greatest possible positive aesthetic and economic impact. So common themes here: economic impact and community prospering and places to go, facilities. Those are really common themes throughout this. So any questions? If you think back just on your time on the board and the time as staff members, does it all still coincide with what you do, how you think, the decisions you make, where you prioritize?
How does the mission statement compare to the language statute, what we're supposed to do?
My God.
It relates to it in the type of facilities, but it doesn't relate much to 4901 or 4902. As far as an auditorium district is one to build, manage, maintain, operate, and market convention centers, auditoriums, and light facilities, and provide for the common good.
Isn't one of our major goals is to provide prosperity for people in the community?
Let's see, that's the economic impact portion.
Yeah, the most general comment is in 4901 is will serve the public need and promote the prosperity, security, and general welfare of the inhabitants of said district, which is about as generic as you can be. That one's pretty broad. That one's awfully broad.
And potentially we could move into sanctuaries or mental health facilities or any of those other do-gooder things.
4902 is where it defines it a little bit more, but again, it leaves it out there to say of like, I think, I don't know exactly, but it's of like facilities or something
of a similar nature.
of a similar nature. There we go.
Yeah, so it's public, commercial, and or industrial purposes, and so public is pretty darn broad. And public auditoriums, exhibition halls, convention centers, sports arenas, and facilities of a similar nature. So
if we want to go out and open a mental health,
that's probably, I think, probably too broad. I mean, I think it goes too far afield of, well, obviously the board can, and can sort of interpret this to some extent as they can, but you think about, public auditoriums, exhibition halls, convention centers, sports arenas, and facilities of a similar nature. It's probably hard to get from there to a mental health facility. a stretch.
But isn't the key there that we can manage and operate it? So when we have to kind of stick with what we know, right? Going to a mental health facility might be a gathering place, but I don't know much about mental health other than what I go through.
I mean, I think it'd be, yeah, I think it'd be challenging, but I think to Jody's point, though, it is, you know, it is reasonably broad. Again, I think you can put a lot of stuff within, you know, a lot of different activities within, you know, auditoriums, halls, centers, arenas, facilities of nature. I mean, that's, you know, fairly broad, but I don't know that you can go. I don't know how much farther afield you can go than the things that you all have, you know, been looked at or presented. I mean, you guys have had so many different things presented to you over the years. I would assume that's pretty much the universe, but gosh, you've done things from, or people suggested things from what, I mean, Shakespeare to opera to obviously baseball stadiums to, you know, it's a pretty broad set of stuff that you've had presented.
And I know we massaged this, the vision mission in 2017. I think that's where we came with this public gathering places to kind of encompass what they're saying in the statute. So that it doesn't include, you know, things like mental health facilities or low income housing or, you know, any of those things that we didn't feel really fit what our purpose was.
I would say the one thing that you all do have the ability to engage in or to participate in would be, you know, to as you've kind of done basically with the you know, with the West base is, you know, work with other public entities. And so to that extent, you know, for example, to the extent that, you know, somebody wanted to create a facility which had 4 or 5 different purposes, you know, however broad they may be, there's no reason that we can't participate with other public entities to create a, you know, a really broad multi-use facility. I think.
And I think some may argue that public gathering places, depending on what type of facility, you know, it could be, some may argue that isn't maybe a completely safe thing if you went to that. Very good discussion. Any other comments about how we live in the district and does it feel like this is still relevant to us today?
Hear Jim if he talks.
Should. There he is.
Jim, can you talk just so we can make sure we can hear you okay?
Yeah, well, I just want to add that I looked at the swim facility versus our mission, and it seems like we met our mission with the swim facility. If you look at it's within our vision and it completes our mission. My belief, anyways. So I think this is all still very relevant.
Okay.
I don't know if Jim told you or I mentioned, or he has COVID. So he still tested positive yesterday, right?
Yeah.
So in lieu of
Like I said,
attending in person and sneezing on everybody, he's attending virtually for us. So that's why we're seeing him on the screen.
All right.
can I ask a question about our purpose? How do you weigh purpose against hotel rooms being filled? Is there a correlation between the facilities that we should build and the number of hotel rooms they will fill? Or does that weigh into it at all?
Oh, absolutely. I think that again, heads and beds, that generates economic impact. And so that's why we actually focus on conventions. the local events are wonderful to have, and, but by bringing people from outside the community, I mean, that's what drives economic impact, because they're renting hotel rooms, they're renting cars, they're buying stuff.
But when you weigh them, if you have a proposal, two proposals, or one is bring in more hotel rooms, will that weigh better for that one, even though it may not fit some of the other criteria?
If it's within a year, no. The local events can contract within a year, and so they get first right of space. If it's outside of a year, then conventions can book as far out as they want. So we try to fill the space as far out as we can, but then anything within 12 months, it's not that we wouldn't take, I mean, we do take conventions within 12 months. But if there's a big gala for 800 people that has history with us, and it's on a Friday night, we have a convention who wants to come in and go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and go out Sunday. Then we revenue manage the space. And at that point in time, we'll take more times than not, we'll take the banquet, the big banquet, rather than a 3 or 4 day convention. Because it's better for the center, quite frankly. If it's, with that being said, I mean, everything, you have to weigh it out, but if it's just, if it's 150 people coming in for a meeting and there's no food and beverage, and so you've got staff that you have to have for 4 days, you have wear and tear on the building for 4 days, and you don't make as much revenue as you would for that one evening event, it becomes a pretty easy revenue management decision.
Yeah.
But anything beyond a year, the conventions have first right. Anything within 12 months, local events can contract. And, quite honestly, that's the balancing act that we do on a very regular basis. Once a month, we look out 18 months to see what's on the books, where we have some holes, where the event managers can go to work on a particular timeframe, where if the sales managers want to, and we get the CVB obviously involved on trying to fill in some of those other dates. So it's always under evaluation. Again, there are some conventions that pop up in the year for the year that it's like, absolutely, let's take that. So.
Thanks, Pat.
Very good. All right. Any other final comments on? Okay, so it sounds like it's still serving us well and fulfilling our purpose. All right, so one of the most important things today is that we have lots of questions, lots of input. I love the dialogue already. We have to remember the smartest person in the room is the one asking the question. So I'm going to be pulling from you a lot of ideas, a lot of questions, and it's really important that we're hearing from everybody, as well. So, and I don't think that's going to be a problem. I love the participation in my meetings with you. All right, so let's kick right into some strengths. You've got some wonderful strengths that you all shared. So the first one is your financial stability, you're fiscally sound, you manage your finances very well. The second strength that you all shared, and clearly this shows, is you have this wonderful opportunity to receive an income source from the hotel tax, and it's a significant source for you. Leadership was wonderful. Both you all shared your appreciation for the competency of the staff, the leadership of Pat with the staff, and also Kristen as your board chair, the leadership of the board. So congratulations and kudos to you for that. It's a wonderful strength to have, and I think it takes a lot of work and a lot of strong communication. And so it's neat to see that you recognize and appreciate that in what you have here. It's very special. One of the strengths that's shared by all of you is your focus on service quality. Again, as I shared the excellence piece of it, when I asked, what is your core that is the most important thing that you really make sure doesn't slip, that is important that you do very well, consistently it was the service in what you deliver. and the quality around the culture. So nice job there. One of our strengths is just that we're in Boise, Idaho. There's a lot. It's everything from close to the airport, downtown, access. It's a growing community. It's an attractive place to be. So Boise, just being in Boise is clearly one of the strengths. And then you appreciate the facilities that we have. They're attractive, they're well-run, they're professional. You have a good reputation and a good brand out there. Certainly Boise Center on the Grove, probably more so than the general public understanding what the Boise Auditorium District is. But people do appreciate what you bring to the table. They appreciate your availability, and you all recognize that and share that as a strength as well. And I mentioned reputation. You have a really respected reputation in the community, and that takes a lot of a conversation at a time and fulfilling your promises to who you serve, whether that's a meeting and fulfilling that. Some wonderful strengths to build on in this process. And then some of you really talked about how much appreciation you had with the commitment that the board had to take care of staff, especially your commitment to them during COVID, and employing the folks and really showing them that we're here for you. And not every organization was able to do that. So kudos to you and congratulations for those. So some wonderful core based strengths that you have. Any questions just about the strengths? Anything around the strengths? We're going to spend lots of time on opportunities that we have, but anything about the strengths that is important that we make sure we talk about. Let's make sure we keep doing this that lands in our discussion later today.
I've got a question about the respected reputation that we have. I'm under the impression that I think people who know who we are respect us, like meeting planners and that group. But the general public in Boise has no idea who we are. I don't know if we're getting the story out of what we actually do and how much we contribute.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that later because for those that know you, you definitely have a respected reputation, but that also many of you shared. I think we still have more education to do in getting, who we are out, and we'll have a good discussion later because, how difficult is it to understand what the Boise Auditorium District really does, how you operate, the statutes that you operate within, and how important is that compared to what you deliver and who you serve, and how do you mesh the two and collaborate the two together. So, and that came up, many of you shared, and it fell in areas either around marketing and PR or relationships with major decision makers out and stakeholders in the community. It fell in a variety of areas. So I think what you're saying, I think you all, feel free to chime in, but I think you all shared some sentiment around that as well.
I have a question about Boise as attractive. We had a retirement party for Bob Maynard and Percy last night, and people come from all over the country. And Chris Antone, who is the chief investment officer of CalSTRS, came because he and Bob are professional friends. And he commented that he can't be reimbursed for travel expenses for coming to Idaho. And I remember at one point we had a discussion, does that include like athletic teams from California?
Yep.
Anybody that has state money
Nope,
in California.
Yep, my nephew is in charge of football operations for San Jose State, and they have to use donor money in order to pay for their travel to Idaho. they're playing Boise State. They can't use state funds.
If I can touch on that, we've actually, it's been Ally and Carrie Westergaard from the CVB have been working. We had a discussion, a follow-up a week ago. Actually, Cody was in Detroit with Kay and Rhonda Carvel from CVB at a trade show mission. I wanted him to go and experience what it was like to be with the sales team. And Cody brought back that there were some comments by meeting planners that they couldn't bring their associations to Idaho because of current political climate. We talked about that as well, particularly a couple of years ago when the legislature enacted some of the transgender issues. And so Carrie and Ally have been doing some research, ASAE, I can't remember, there's a couple of other professional meeting planning organizations that have actually done some research on economic or what the economic impact is to communities or states where these travel bans have been put in place by states or associations. And really, it's been relatively ineffective. There are some particular pockets that it's been sort of effective. North Carolina was the first one, but as more and more states have been adopting legislation, particularly on the transgender issue, these economic bans are actually not as effective as some of these associations would think, and some of these states would like to think. A good example, as Mike already said, is a football team still travels to Idaho, still travels to Boise. So some of these associations and organizations are finding ways to still do it. And in fact, there's been, and again, I asked them to try to put together some information that I could give to you all, but just so you know, it's in the works. And that, you know, in Idaho's case, particularly in Boise's case, we haven't seen, at least at this point, a negative impact to those organizations that can still come to Idaho and Boise. They are coming to Idaho and Boise, and that Cody heard the same thing I did. I do at IMAX, that people are chomping at the bit to come to Idaho still. So again, there is a negative connotation among some meeting planners and certainly some states, i.e. California. But according to the professional meeting planning associations, the impact of those boycotts are not as effective as some organizations purport. So I'll have more for you all as soon as they're able to wrap it up. It is a topic though, certainly among these major meeting planning companies.
Any other comments or input regarding your strengths? You need to pat yourself on the back for some good strengths there. All right, let's, and then the last, that's additional strength is you've had some pretty big successful wins in regards to renovations and expansions. And so you've done it well. I think you all see the value of that in fulfilling your mission. So congratulations there as well. All right, so let's talk about some of the weaknesses that you shared. This came up consistently, and it's more of an obstacle, and that is this dependency on others for you to get where you want to go, or for you to accomplish and do things that you want to do. So it's really this understanding this collaborative opportunity, both public and private, in order to move forward. Educating the political decision makers. There's just a lot of opportunity there, and it also shows up as a continued challenge that you all recognize, and I'm sure you feel this out there. So one of the things that I think is really important, and some of you shared a little bit about this, is how do we take this now and how do we overcome it where possible? How do we not see it as a brick wall and stop? But is there something that we can do where we can come in kind of through the back door be proactive either at education, relationships, whatever. You all recognize a tremendous amount of impact that you have in building relationships that both Pat and Kristen, for example, have leaned in and been proactive at meeting with folks and trying to keep those relationships solid. But is there another way of thinking? Some of you shared, like, how do we, build a coalition, or how do we do something differently than we're doing today where this isn't such an obstacle? So I would love to open that up for a good discussion.
Do you have an example of what kind of external decision makers were mentioned?
I think it's people serving in either commissioners, people, some obstacles you face, for example, with, maybe fairgrounds, and some of it's just a lack of understanding, and how do we overcome that roadblock? And some of it is, we don't, we are at the will sometimes of some of these decision makers in being able to accomplish what we see could be a wonderful thing for our community.
Connie, I'll touch base if it's okay. I mean, to Chase's question, because years ago when Rick Issaquire was still on the county commissioner, or county commission, I remember meeting with Rick 3 or 4 times, and Bob Batista is my counterpart over at the fairgrounds, Expo Idaho. And so discussions go all the way back that far, as to what's going to happen in the fairgrounds. What could we do? Could we build a Boise Center prototype over, where the little outdoor gazebo stage that they have over there, could we put Boise Center right there? We have, they got plenty of infrastructure. Could we do walkways? We were getting pretty creative on napkins. To, the conversations I've had with Block 22 about the arena. Those started back in like 2006 or 8, right? And so they'll come on the table and they'll go off the table. We don't have any, we have no control over who owns, what the ownership decisions are, or the county commissioners' goals and objectives are. With Bob Batista, probably every couple of months, just talk about business trends and that kind of thing, but also, is there any movement? We had a presentation by Tommy Alquist a couple of years ago, when he was looking at the fairgrounds. So in those particular cases, and even currently with some of the county commissioners that Chris and I have met with, and trying to explain to people, what we can do, how we can be a good business partner. We had the tri-agency group years ago between CCDC, the city, and us on how to move some things forward. So we can control our own destiny, but we're not in control of other agencies and their decision-making process. Certainly not being critical of anything. It's just the way it is. So it's not for a lack of trying.
Right.
Just curiously, do you believe the fairgrounds will be developed in my lifetime?
I'm not even gonna venture a guess on that one. I met with another guy last week, and saying, okay, what, another one, is actually Meridian. I've been talking with some of those folks for at least a couple of years before COVID, and even recently, as a month ago, about, the development of an auditorium district. My counterpart in Idaho Falls, Rob Spear, he and I grew up together. He's my counterpart in the development of that facility. So Raul Khanna, who's in Pocatello, he and I talk all the time about their facility. So, 3 to 5 years is what I've been told, probably at the fairgrounds. So I would hope that, yes, it's still within your and my lifetimes. It
Hang
goes,
around till it's done.
yeah.
Until they change those commissioners.
Well, one's gonna change in November, and I'm told that, obviously whenever you have change, then things may or may not move faster. And again, it's all a roll of the dice at this point.
And I think that's part of the problem, with the fairgrounds and having the county commissioners change really every 2 years. is that it really kind of stalls it for the next election cycle. You know, they want to, you know, it kind of kicks the can down the road continually. Something that we had, you know, just chatted about even yesterday is that I believe there's like a director of operations type person at the county. Don't know who that is. I know that I've seen their name, but I don't, you know, what's their role? How much influence do they have over kind of controlling some of those larger projects to where it's not really kind of at the whim of the political structure and maybe more an operation like a PAT, you know, over at the county who's driving things. I don't know. That could be an opportunity to kind of inquire to see who that person is and if there's, you know, what their role would be.
Kristen, it's Steve Rutherford. He's formerly with the city. He's a great, he's a great guy. I have a relationship with him as well.
Okay. And do you know what his role is there? Do you know how much he kind of owns those larger projects in the timeline on that and how much rests with the county commissioners?
You know, I don't think he really drives projects as much as he he manages, excuse me, the day-to-day. He's a pure director of operations over there. And so while the board is setting policy and budgets, he takes what they put forth out of their meetings and makes it happen. But he's never really weighed in on the things that might delve into the politics of the county.
Got it.
My understanding of his position is he was brought on because commissioners had to decide on whether or not they were going to approve purchasing toilet paper. Like
Oh,
the commissioners did everything. So they brought that person on that role to take care of a lot of those day-to-day things that are really should have been on autopilot,
Mhm.
but not going to be affecting any larger
The
scale
larger.
projects. Yeah. And talking with two of the people running for Kendra's seat on Thursday, if one of them gets elected, the person flat out said, I do not approve of public funds going towards anything like a stadium for a team who can build it for themselves. So if we were hoping for that, it does not seem very positive in the next 2 years.
So any other ideas you can think of how we might overcome this major obstacle? Because I think you all shared it as, you know, we have this tremendous opportunity to go and do great things, but we truly are stuck. And there was, some of you even expressed a little bit on the frustration side of, you know, we see it. It's just clear to us the opportunity we can deliver, but we're not able to impact that like we would like to. Is there an approach? Is there any few other ideas on either new players, new relationships, a different approach, a different delivery of the information? Is there any ideas there? Have you thought about?
Well, our secret weapon is our attorney. We faced a number of obstacles that Mike and his team have been able to show us the light, to be able to overcome them.
I mean, I think that, one of the things is that what Pat Gitter has done over the years, and they kind of ebb and flow depending on whatever happens, but for example, your what's it called? The tri-agency group, which, then ended up, having some sort of technical issues, I guess I would say, but I think maybe, going back and trying to, whatever the pitfalls and other things were before, but nonetheless, I think, Pat, that was pretty effective at the time, at least in terms of having those discussions, and maybe, that expands to somehow include the county folks as well. I mean, maybe there's a way to, we'd have to sit down with the right people, but if we could formalize something which doesn't, whether it technically runs afoul or not, if it's got the right public perception as to what it is we're doing, maybe that's the way to try to institutionalize it a little bit, so we're not as subject to the whims of elections, I guess. I mean, because this is a great example of how, putting the strategic plan is a great example of how elections don't have to, change the scope and course of an entity. And again, maybe there's, we can't force other people to do that, but again, maybe if we can somehow reconfigure what you were doing before, maybe there's a way to, get people around the table again and get them, more invested in strategic planning.
And I think even expand it, right? Tri-agency was what, City of Boise, CCDC, and us. I definitely think county shouldn't be involved, and then really kind of expand it to Mayor of Garden City, Eagle, Meridian, maybe even the school district. Who else is out there looking at projects that, rather than being stuck in silos, because I think that, sometimes you hear things about, oh, well, the city of Eagle wants to do a sports park, and then, somebody wants to do another hockey arena, and somebody wants to do this. So rather than kind of everybody just not connecting and not getting kind of the mass support behind it, maybe this person throws in this, and maybe this person throws in this, and maybe the auditorium district can do a piece of this, and really creating like one X type of project for the valley rather than having smaller knockoffs in each of the communities. I think that would be beneficial, so that we're all kind of talking together. And I don't know if that happens now. It doesn't seem like it does.
That's a good point, Kristen. When we were, before the expansion project came about, the tri-agency, we had a lot of things that we were throwing up there to discuss that would benefit or fit the mission of CCDC in the city and the auditorium district. But because we were in the same room on a regular basis, once a month meeting and talking over these projects, when the expansion of the center and the Clearwater building project came about, we were already in communication with each other and discussing financing options. That it made it much easier to collaborate on the project, because we'd had such a history of meeting and discussing potential projects.
I think you would get on the front end of it maybe a little sooner if you had something like that was formalized, that was just a special invitation to join at the table and have it be a regular.
I don't know if this falls under weakness or threats, but our statute has a lot to do with what we're able to do.
Right. That definitely came up in the threat is really paying attention to it, making sure that you're following the statute, that you don't misstep there, but also just the fact that the statute exists. Yes.
So Jim touched on a couple entities that I think we might be able to look at that I think have been successful. I don't know if we're allowed to do it though. The city and CCDC both control typically land first, and then they put out an RFP that fits their mission for what they need to see, whether it's affordable housing with the city or CCDC, puts the project over here across from the YMCA and says, here's what we want to see, here's the parameters, bring us ideas. Are we allowed to do something like that where we have land set aside and do an RFP? Because the landholder seems to be the one in a lot of these, instances that's holding us back and kind of setting the rules, right? The fairgrounds is controlled by the county, and that's the reason that they're at the table, right? Are we able to purchase property and do an RFP that fits our mission?
We certainly can. I mean, again, as Hyde points out, we live with our statutes, but I figure there's a way to get there. So yeah, we have a plan. We can get there, and there are ways to get things done, and it gets more challenging or fun when you're starting adding other parties to the mix, but just the fact that it's a little tougher doesn't mean it isn't something we ought to try to, we ought to try to do. So no, I think we can certainly do, all or any of those things and explore them. And, yeah, again, my role on it, just be able to say, you guys figure out what it is you want to do, and then we'll figure out a way to get it done. So
Does the
we'll
land
get
have,
there.
does the land have to be in the district boundaries?
Doesn't have, I'm almost certain it does not have to be, but,
Can you check?
yeah, we'll check on that while we're talking, but it's, but it's certainly more challenging, I think, if it's not. But yeah, let me check.
And more than one of you mentioned that, you'll see when we get to the opportunities as look at purchasing some land, take some of our financial resources and just get at least the land purchase, because that truly may open up then a what next, a more open discussion. And I think there was also a couple comments about how do we proactively share that if this is our obstacle, if we can't overcome that, we're gonna go do this, and this may actually not be in your best interest type of a thing. And so there might be something that we figure out a way to overcome wherever those roadblocks are.
Our language is to acquire, dispose of, and encumber real and personal property in any interest therein, including leases and easements within said district. So to the extent that we wanted to do something outside of the district, we might be able to enter into a joint powers agreement with another agency or some other kind of entity and potentially do something outside of the district. There's I think it's something we could explore. There might be a way to get there. But it'd be challenging, but it's, for example, we've done things with sewer districts where you'll have two adjoining sewer districts who need to do something together. So then they create a joint powers entity where the two of them together then do that project. And it's not within, it's within the bounds of each of them. And that'd be the kind of thing we might be able to do here. So.
Well, I talked to a developer who has a lot of property out around 10 Mile, and unfortunately 10 miles outside of our boundaries. But
yeah, we have to, I think, at least do it with somebody else, with some other public entity, I think, in order to get around, not to get around, in order to, fit within our statutory limitations.
So then that really, and I don't know if this is later, but that really speaks to another weakness. We're beholden to our boundaries
Yeah, right,
with
right.
whatever we
You
do.
have to get creative. Just like Mike said, if you want to do something, you've got to find a way to get there through very creative.
And they're kind of wonky because it includes just a little bit of Eagle and I think just a little bit of Meridian, Olive Garden City. So,
Well, and that is even the case. You're going to see one of the comments is really how do we partner and collaborate with our nearby other districts or build additional districts, and the boundaries and the voting process that has to take place is an obstacle.
Cody wanted to build Top Golf, but I told him no.
That would have been great.
I'm
All right,
kidding.
any other comment? We're gonna be talking a little bit more about this. This was a theme that continued to show up in a variety of other areas, but any other comments on this? Okay. The next one is lack of clarity with plans and new projects, and you just heard some of the reason why, right? It's we really need to get dialed in what some of those projects are gonna be. We need to be doing something. There was almost frustration, and I would love for any of you to share what are some of these ideas that we can have that to overcome kind of this brick wall that we keep hitting with collaborative partners that we can't control and influence. So that this came up as a major, we have this tremendous assets and we can't do anything with them, and we can't figure out what next to do. So what are some of those other projects? Someone mentioned an indoor sports arena, for example, to kick off the discussion. And, you know, let's talk about what some of those other things are that you might be thinking, or how to approach things differently to get to a project.
I mean, I think just first off, just to kind of list the projects that have been floating out there is a multi-sports facility, indoor, outdoor, stadium, some sort of performing arts venue, whether that be opera, Shakespeare, gosh, I think we've had maybe all of them at some point.
Yeah.
Come talk to the district. Large hotel or convention space. The arena. What else am I missing? What other projects have been out there?
There was the YMCA at one point.
Yeah. And the aquatics facility, of course.
So on all these, is there other obstacles beyond influencing other decision makers that we need? What are the other obstacles we're running into besides district boundaries?
Convincing a large hotel brand to come here and build a large hotel.
Yeah, and you're gonna see this as hotel availability is definitely gonna show up. So if we can't convince it, can we build it? Can we, you know, what are our options with each of our challenges that we continue to face? And do we want to go there?
For the sports arena, I would say lack of an anchor team or tenant. You know, when we've had proposals where we've moved forward on ball fields or multi-purpose stadiums, we've had an association with some existing teams, and right now that's not out there. You know, I think that the Boise Hawks is probably off the table, but who knows? In order for one of those facilities to be successful, it's been our opinion that there needs to be an associated team or organization to make it work, so that you can justify. So a schedule which would make it active enough to justify the investment.
Jim, what's our biggest obstacle to be able to find that?
Well, I do believe that there's, you know, those are all nearly, they don't operate at a great profit or they operate at a loss, but it would be part of an anchor project to a larger development, which would make it sexy enough for somebody to take that on.
And it depends on the scope. For instance, or Pocatello has a indoor multi-purpose facility, but it's indoor basketball, indoor volleyball, that sort of thing. And as a community asset, they are busy and they are full. Interestingly enough, Idaho Falls, an arena with some small meeting space associated with it. And I need to reach out to Rob again because I think their completion date was November. So I need to reach out and see how they're doing. And that one is more targeted to what Jim is describing as a local hockey team, as the anchor, sort of like what they do next door. You know, when we were in Mesa a few weeks ago for IUVM Venue Connect, we went out to Bell Bank Park, 344 acres, 300,000 square feet under roof. And theirs again is a community asset, not a team target. And they've already done they opened in January and they've already done over 1 million people through the facility. That's outdoor and indoor. Very cool project, but it's $260 million. So I think we're a couple of coins short. But you know, to take what I was even thinking, and this thing was on steroids as far as the size and scope and success of it already. So I think it just depends on what scope, you know, the board would decide what they want to do. Our challenge, you know, the hotel situation really is our biggest challenge is we add space, and we've talked about this during board meetings, that we need added space, but it's for local events. This is, 600 to 1,000 person, event space. But our hands are tied by hotel availability. We have lots of really nice hotels in the market. There's not a dog in the bunch. I mean, they're all very, very nice. And the new ones coming online in the next couple of years, we've got another 300 rooms coming on, 350 in the next 2 years. Should the, Jared Smith's properties next to Hotel 43, break ground, I think he was looking at the first of the year, but even that 300 rooms in the market means maybe 100 new available for conventions, which isn't going to help us much. The hotels are very cooperative, but again, leisure transient demand is such that, they'll give us what they can, but so our hands are tied short of 1,000 room hotel. Chase.
And call the Omni and see if they can come over here.
Does anybody know what Eagle is planning on doing? I know I've mentioned this to you. I had Jason Pierce, the mayor of Eagle, speak at our Kiwanis Club. And he talked about a regional sports park that they're working on, that they want to have 3 fields open by fall for some tournament coming in, indoor, outdoor. And that was the first I've heard of that. So to the point of not like communities not talking to each other and
Right.
thinking of big projects, that's where I see opportunity is what are other cities or entities talking about doing?
Right.
Because it may be some more similar in nature to what we've even talked about. Just don't even know that.
Right, like if Eagle decides to do something small, Meridian wants to do something in their community, Boise wants to, build something, it's like, well, could
And when
we
I-
just not gone together?
And when I hear
Build a big
regional,
one.
exactly, and when I hear regional is what he said, I'm going, okay, well, that's gonna drive hotels, that's gonna drive, so we're already fighting over the hotel, what we have as far as the room availability for conventions or events like Far West, and
And is that youth?
I believe he's planning on doing youth sports, yeah.
Because I know that, Far West comes in and they take up every hotel in June timeframe.
From Ontario to Mountain Home.
Yeah, and I know that, I believe, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit more, I haven't spoken to Carrie in a while about the inquiries that they get for sports related items, lacrosse, volleyball, tournaments, things like that, that they could bid on that we don't.
Well, and that's
We
where I was
aren't
coming
able to.
from, was a community asset, not a team driven.
Right,
But again, I think everything obviously is on the table. It just, the challenge with going team driven is just what Jim's already alluded to, trying to find that team.
Right.
And the longevity of that franchise or whatever.
and Spokane does a pretty good job of, they have a sports facility up there, right?
Well, they have a true arena, but then when they expanded, we went up there to look at their expansion as we were starting the project here for East, just to see, what they did and, what they did well and what they would have done differently. And their expanded square footage was actually made for basketball, volleyball. The roof system was high enough to handle indoor volleyball tournaments and that sort of thing. So they added their component, but they've got 2 hotels. One I think is 700 rooms and the other one is 400. They've got a DoubleTree and a Marriott. The Marriott is actually connected to it by hallway. The DoubleTree is just right next door, but they have over 1,000 rooms within
The
a
hotels.
couple hundred feet.
That's what makes it.
And Pat, those were publicly subsidized though, those hotels, right?
I believe so, Jim. Yeah, I can't remember the guy's name. He was already a hotel owner in Spokane, and he was actually on their board. And he built the Marriott, and then the DoubleTree had been there forever. So yeah, those were public, or those were private. I believe those were private funds, not public funds, I think.
And I had asked, just, so you all have this, I'd asked Carrie several months ago, a while ago, to pull data from similar sized cities. And what's the largest hotel room or largest hotel number of rooms they've got, the total meeting space, total hotel meeting space, total convention space, and total meeting space overall in the city. And Boise comes in at almost at the bottom of the list. So it's Boise, Madison, Little Rock, Spokane, Scottsdale, Salt Lake City. Range in population of actual city, anywhere from 200 to 270,000 people. Boise's at 250 rooms for the largest hotel, up to Salt Lake City's at 775, Scottsdale 750, Spokane 716, Little Rock 418, Madison's at 373. The total hotel meeting space, Boise's at 14,000. And then Scottsdale's at 106,000. And everybody else, even Madison is at 27,000. Convention space, we've got 86. Scottsdale doesn't have a center, but it goes all the way up to Salt Lake at 987,000 square feet. The next one up to us is Madison at 212,000. So total meeting square footage, Boise's around 100,000. Madison's at 239, then you go to 295, 419. Scottsdale's smaller at 106. Well, they're still slightly above our Salt Lake City at over 1 million. So when you look at the data on similar sized cities, we're underserved, I guess is probably the best way to say, with hotels, hotel rooms, large hotels and total meeting space. We're still kind of at the bottom of the list, which is, I was shocked, to be honest. I didn't think that we'd be at the bottom.
Who are the major, is there major developers, or certainly that Carrie and that organization has some impact, but is there an information source that could create the good plan to be able to be attractive to a major hotel chain?
Pat probably has a lot more information on this. There's a show, right? And then there's, you've worked with John Q. Hammonds before.
A number of years ago, through Skip Oppenheimer, actually, through his office, we got connected with John Q. Hammonds, and we worked with John Q. Hi, were you on the board when we were working with John Q? So we met with John Q several times. And then the recession in 2008 hit and pretty much put the kibosh on it. We were going to work together. He was going to put in a Renaissance, Marriott Renaissance Hotel, and we were going to build a convention center. In fact, we toured three of his facilities, Rogers, Arkansas, Frisco, Texas, and Rogers, Frisco, and St. Louis. And so where he built the hotel and he owned the convention center space next door. And so it was going to be that similar project. It would be going to be public-private partnership. And then the recession hit, and then John Q had a stroke, and then he died. So
That was the name of, sorry, that was the ball game.
So there is a conference called the Hotel Data Conference that brings together all the major brands and franchisors and franchisees. You can visit with all the big players. The challenge is as the district statute authority, I was looking for my, this one. I don't believe that we can, at least historically, I've been told we can't get involved with private development like that. And in fact, it came out during the tri-agency group, various options. What could everybody throw in, whose arrows could we throw in the quiver to try to get a hotel? I mean, that was a topic back then, Jim. I know you said in some of those meetings, I think you were in some of those meetings too, but anyway, there are opportunities to chase being the development side, probably more insight as to in today's world. I mean, it's been a while since I've been, like I said, working with those guys. So, and I'm sure the rules have probably changed by now, but
There's tons of groups out there that do it, but I guess part of my hesitancy on like, is it even worth trying that is Jared Smith knows hotels really well. He's got unlimited ability to go height-wise on this new one that he's building, but he's only doing like 246 rooms or somewhere
that's
in that
combined
area.
between two properties.
Right. Why would he not go more if there's more of a demand or potential to do that? Maybe it's budget, but I don't think so. So what's the case to be made if we go out and look for 1,000 room developer, for them to come in, look at that and say, it doesn't make sense, right? I think a lot of this comes down to our population is probably not supportive of that type of facility on an ongoing basis. And we are geographically remote enough that we're probably not going to get a bunch of, conferences like from East Coast coming this direction, which could be big enough to do something like, you see these in Nashville, Vegas, Florida, those kind of places, or the 1,000-room conventions, right? Or how feasible is it for us to actually support that?
We can get 1,000 to 1,200 in this market. The problem for us, we get 700 now, but we have to use 7, 8 hotels in order to accommodate it. And so we can't, we can do one 500, 700 person convention because the hotel's within reasonable distance. We've even offered to pay for transportation in the past if we have to use more hotels. But meeting planners for above 800 probably, they want 1 or 2 hotels. I remember when I was in the hotel business and at SeaTac, the Red Lion SeaTac they still have 850 rooms and 150,000 square feet of meeting space. So, literally, those are the type of properties we compete with even today, in trying to, so we're just competing with a hotel. We're not even competing with convention centers. That's at that point. So the market is out there to grow the conventions. The problem simply is, again, that sheer lack of availability. And I don't disagree with, it's real easy for me to spend a developer's money, but,
So it could be that, this could go a variety of different ways, right? But do we track, for example, how many times we have to say no to a meeting planner? And can that build some data that would, be helpful to someone? Or are we misunderstanding how many times that happens and thinking it's a business model when it's not? And so it can go either way with that, but I think there is an opportunity potentially to gather more data or communicate with Carrie and together try to work on how many times does someone call and we just, and they only find out once. They're not going to call the next year when they would have come back, had we had the hotel and the facilities. But so that was one of the comments that you all, many of you shared, was how do we get more proactive at going and finding our new projects and expansion, kind of rather than wait till something's kind of come our way. And so what are those other things that we can give to Pat and Cody to help them with where else should we be that we're not showing up? What are you thinking when you're saying, we wish we were more proactive at finding these projects?
I have an idea, but I have to go to the restroom.
Okay.
Are we able to take, do we
want
have a
to do
scheduled break? Should I
quick
wait?
break? Are you all, okay, let's do a quick break and just think about that, on the break.
Well, if they were able to do 600, 600, and all of a sudden you have one hotel at the house, full convention. For us. That's $1 million. That's where you get a spam with the developer. Well, the rates, the group rates are pushing closer to your transient rate. Right. So if your transient rate is 250, but your group rate is 150, and all of a sudden, times 500 times 4 nights. So, but if the rack rate's 220 and
Now
you're
that I'm gonna
90,
get a bill for it. it's
and that
on the
doubles down to
numbers.
30 bucks. And
Now
the
you.
hotelier knows that, they're gonna hit your bar and your restaurant and that sort of thing. Well, then that $30 delta, I mean, if you got a transient customer, are they gonna spend as much money in your bar and restaurant than a convention group? And the chance they're probably not. So all of a sudden, that's where that $30 delta you're talking. One, well, I mean, in Phoenix, when I'd be sitting with, any of the guys I was sitting with, I mean, we were dropping 50, 60 bucks, right? And, when you buy, you got 2 or 3 guys sitting there, and we're all yammering, just buy a couple of rounds. So you're up to 60 bucks. So, yeah, I mean, look at, right? So you gotta know they're making it up. So.
I noticed that.
The market demand right now is such that, again, what's the cost per key? What do you think a cost per key is now, Chase, for a full service Grove 4-star-ish, probably 50 a key? 50,000 a key?
Trying to think, I had a hotel developer tell me this not too long ago. I'd say it was edging more towards like 70.
Holy crap.
Yeah, but that also could have been in the height of everything. Escalating where lumber was sky high.
Well, it also depends on the
Labor.
amount of meeting space, because a 1,000-room hotel, you're gonna need 100,000 square feet of meeting space
Yeah,
of your own,
and are we a direct competitor with them at that point?
probably.
Yeah,
Well,
could we be contracted to run something like that?
Enjoying the summer?
But is a 1,000-room developer just gonna wanna do it on their own? Yeah, that makes a lot more sense than third party.
although, again, it sort of depends.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. If you got a 1,000-room or an 800-room hotel, and your transient rate's going for 250, your group rate's going for 180. So you got $70 help per night. 500 rooms times 3 nights. Is the amount that convention group gonna eat and drink in your bar and restaurant. If you shrink that delta to 30 bucks, then all of a sudden, I can tell you the bar in Phoenix, the Sheraton, it's a 1,000-room hotel, the Sheraton's a 1,000-room hotel.
Afraid he would take off.
They made
And
They would let him off.
the group rate was
First thing he did
179.
was take off.
And I
So
can
a
tell you
dog across the
that
field.
they made a crap load
And
of
he
the bar
decided
every
to go
single
over and
night.
say
In
hello.
fact, even during the daytime, they had a little breakfast thing going in
It's
the
about
morning.
half
probably
an
spent
hour.
between breakfast and some drinks, $30 a day. if
He
not
came
more.
back.
Yeah, so all of a sudden then the
I
hotelier's
looked
going,
at you
the
and I
margin on
I
rooms
wasted
is,
3 months with this dog.
that's your biggest
Poor
profit
dog.
margin.
So
But
yeah,
if
he
your
was
bar and
great.
restaurant, your bar is your second, and then your
Part
restaurant,
of your life.
your margins are narrower, but if I'm making a
Through this so
killing
many
on
times.
whiskey
Yeah.
and rooms,
Yeah.
it's worth it.
Awesome.
Hard to think
You
about
bring
it in
1,000
another-
keys into downtown,
Oh, yeah.
what would the impact look like that for the average daily rate? I mean, it's gonna plummet, right?
We've always had 2 dogs.
Amazingly, well, for that side of the hotel, it
You should wait
might on a short-term basis, but
2
when you
years
look at,
before we
current,
think about
every time a
any
hotel
other
opens downtown,
dog. 'Cause our
they open a market rate
single dog just loves
every single time.
being the center
There
of
hasn't been a
attention.
reduction in rates from any of the new hotels,
Yeah.
not one.
biggest was,
That much supply came in.
how big is Garrett's? Not the most
It's one, I think they're 160.
That much inventory came in, there would be a dip, but what would happen is we would start selling it and start to fill it, so there would be a ramp back up. I don't know how quickly or slow. but
It should be a
2 years to sell it,
Should be
right?
a pretty fast rebound in today's market. Like I said, when Jared opened, when the Home Two Suites opened,
Because the kids just-
Garden Inn opened, they all opened at market rate. In fact, I remember talking with
And it's got teeth.
Eric Hansen from the Hampton, John Cunningham. I mean, we were having breakfast one day. And obviously you have to be a little careful when you're, talking rates.
We were
and
at a
occupancy,
party, an
but-
outside party.
But, they were both sort of fine in their coffee that evening about how these new hotels were converted, how the rates were gonna go down. And I looked at them both and I called them out, I was like, come on. I said, do you want a little cheese with that wine? Because, and they said, when your hotel, I said, when I was at Riverside in the Griff Hotel, I said, John, Block 22 didn't call me and ask if it was okay to this. I said, when the Marriott over in the Courtyard opened over on Broadway, I said, nobody called me to,
I grabbed.
I said, in both of those hotels back in the day, I said, they definitely caused some
That's all I
market,
needed was.
and
Then we have a-
rates and occupancy, but we rebounded fairly quickly back then. And so they both sort of chuckled, and sure enough, when these, the rates kept going up, and when the new hotels opened, they all opened at market rate. So.
We're tracking the cancellations, or if somebody calls, they can't come here because of it. What I actually saw firsthand when I was in Detroit was groups where they said, hey, we're looking at June, and just because of the Far West Soccer, we're like, that's not even an option. So sometimes it's something we probably need to be documenting more. Maybe Kay, now we are doing that level. That's something I don't see on the USI side where we're reporting on.
Yeah, but you look at something like Far West Soccer, Far West hurts Boise Center. But
if we were able to
the
book it,
district does really, really well from the
Yeah,
rest.
but if we were able to book a convention and have Far West Soccer, that's more data for those hotel rooms. That's where I'm going. That's where I don't know if we're really capturing all of that data, right?
Well, and then the others, from,
All right, I
Data
think we'll
side,
go ahead
some-
and kick back into gear here. So right before break, the question that I threw out to you is kind of a revisit of some of the input that some of you shared is how do we become more proactive at seeking the projects and identifying some of those opportunities. So Chase will kind of kick it off to you to kick off this conversation.
Yeah, so I just thought of this because you pulled up the mission at the beginning and it coincided with a meeting that I had last week with a nonprofit. And the part that kind of made me think about it was public gathering spaces and economic impact. Janus is a local nonprofit that does a lot of different projects. Well, they were approached to see if they could help a developer out of Salt Lake that is building a low-income housing project on Orchard in Franklin, which the city purchased and went out for an RFP. This developer pretty much wants nothing to do with the commercial space. They have to have the commercial space. And they want to figure out a way to make it a community good because it's not where they're making money. They're open to having somebody lease it, they'll condo it and sell it. They want something to happen that is for the public good. What I started to think about was we have an issue here at the center with labor, right? Getting staff that is skilled and able to do stuff. There is a big demographic on the bench area around here that could be skilled labor that would fit a lot of different work forces. But one of them being able to cook and help out in the serving, those kind of things. One idea that Janice threw out during our meeting was a food incubator of sorts where people could start their own restaurant and then somewhat be subsidized. And then once they got to a point, they could move out into the market and create room for another one. Thinking something in here might be a way that we could help develop and train a workforce that could then go and work for different people that serve our hotels, our center. And I don't know if that's necessarily in our mission. That's what popped into my head as a way to have public good and also economic impact by teaching people how to become more skilled and then go in and get better jobs. And something that could be a smaller lift than a sports park that we could maybe act on soon and potentially then become something that we can put in the news, to High's point earlier, of what's the center actually do? You know, or what's the district doing? How does this work? And all of that is pretty much a conscious stream of thought that just came out, so I haven't thought through it more than that. So, just an idea.
Yeah, it's a good brainstorming idea. Something that did make me think as Chase was talking, and I thought of this through a couple of your comments, is formalizing some type of really good collaborative group of representatives. That's the mayors and all those people. But you may want to also include a large foundation director or the director of United Way that would have a lot of knowledge about. And not only that, I think you would get some pretty good insight just because of so many events you do that are serving nonprofits that you may become aware of, because I was aware of that, but never thought another thing of that particular development through working with NeighborWorks Boise on their planning session. So it's thinking about who are the right people that should be in this group that would be that proactive ability to hear about things early on. Comments about that or other ideas to help the team with, I mean, they're doing a lot of meeting with people and conversation, but what are some other ideas you have of how we could be more proactive? And you'll notice I dropped the next bullet, which is insufficient hotel room availability, because we were talking about that as a weakness, and clearly that showed up in your input as well.
I think one of the things we were talking about too, and this might show up in the threats too, is it's also a threat.
Yes. 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 Many of these, every decision has a consequence, and every obstacle, if you overcome it has a consequence, or if you don't overcome it has a consequence too. So,
Because we were talking over here about if you brought in a 1,000-room hotel, they would want the convention room space and would bring in another 100,000 square feet of convention space, which would then be larger than us.
Unless we
unless you
partner
were
with the
Yeah,
hotel
absolutely.
and do a condo something to where we have the space and they have the hotel room. Now, if that's, that's all, will it pencil out for the hotel? Was that something they would do? I don't know, but I mean, that would be,
You could do it legally, so.
legally, we could do
Yeah.
it, yeah.
And we can, we can create the structure that'll work, but,
And if we could do it close, we could attach it or, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and not only do you never rely on your lawyers for financial advice, you'll also do it for architectural advice. But
In theory.
I'm assuming there are ways to, mix it, the fact that whoever it is won't let us go across that street. I think we can go that way though, right? I mean, I'm assuming.
I think in today's world,
Could go across 9th.
Mhm.
To,
Two different operating roadways, ITD and Ada County Highway District.
And ITD says no, Ada County.
I don't know if we've ever cracked the egg with Ada County or not. I don't know.
well, we haven't with Ada County, but this is 1990s. It was like 1993 when we did the Overstreet expansion, or 92. When we did the study to go Overstreet, and back then there were some lawsuits with ITD pending because we were going over street, and the parking garage across the street was designed to accommodate our Overstreet
exactly.
on Front Street. And
Stairwells.
and the stairwells, the storage, the elevators, it was all designed for us. The district helped pay for some of that. But then people thought that it was a crazy idea to build over a street. It was gonna fall down and kill people. It's like, we've been building over streets for 100 years, but anyway, So that's when we started looking at alternate space. Parcel B and that, so.
If we want to go close, we pretty much need Oppenheimers. Right? Whether it's
Block
right next
22.
door or across the street
No, block 22
or block 22.
is Hotel 43. Right?
Yeah,
Or
that's going over.
both.
Yeah, that's
or
true.
both, or both, yeah.
Or the arena.
Right. And so, maybe it's just checking in with those folks again and poking the dragon.
And
Because hey, maybe just build up Hotel 43, build up over the garage and just, I don't know.
I'm assuming it's not or it is a chicken and egg thing, whatever it is, but I'm assuming the convention space in the hotel would have to effectively happen more or less at the same time, right? Because we don't have the space. It doesn't make sense unless they're both there together, right? Is that correct?
And we'd have to be in an active urban renewal district if we wanted to bond.
No. We can,
We could do it without CCDC.
if we need, we wouldn't need, we can do certificates of participation. So, yeah.
And I'll just speak to it from the venue operator side. The more that we piecemeal into these buildings, the streets we're already on for loading docks and loading in and out of it, that is actually a weakness or a threat to the convention side of things, unless we really think about storage and how you move in. One of the busiest corners is right here, and loading in and out of the west side of the convention center without getting a second lane closure permit is currently already tough enough. So bigger space, bigger events, you got to think about that impact to the other streets around you, the loading areas, that kind of stuff as well.
If we only had parcel B.
Right. Any other ideas that you've been thinking about that we can be more proactive about? So I think some data collection is surfacing a little bit of enhancing, starting to track a little bit and gather some additional data as well. But
I'm going to take a sidebar real quick because I want to do it before I forget, because what you mentioned with Janice, and they have a lot of refugee programs under them. Is that something that you guys have thought about tapping into? Is
The IR for staffing,
for staffing? Yeah.
yes, the IRC, we have kind of connected into that. I think they're overwhelmed right now with the number of people that are influxing. So I know we've engaged them, but we haven't had a ton of success with it. I know Riverside had some success, but similar obstacles where they ran into with communication. Just they're overwhelmed right now with a lot of refugees coming in. So their responsiveness has been spotty a little bit. So.
That was just a
okay, yeah, good comment.
Okay.
All right, the next weakness was the need for this board to have more groupthink at a board level. So several of you mentioned around either a lot of presentation, the team brings the presentation, but you would like more group discussion, more groupthink, more so. These are the things where we have to help the team, right? In regards to what that group discussion is. What are meeting structural changes you could make? What are board packet changes, whatever those are, where you're pulling from each of you that are serving on this board to provide more input and provide. What were you thinking when you were sharing that about you wish you had more groupthink that might be potential possibilities?
One of the things I always thought about, rather than a group think of trying to come up with a project, I would prefer to see Pat come up with an idea or clear the ideas before they come to us. And then we have the discussion about the project. And we don't have to be bothered with projects that don't fit in to the criteria. And we have a criteria set up for projects, but I still think it should all be clear through Pat.
And I think this is more in line with when things are brought to this group, not enough board participation is happening. That's more, I think, what it is. So if Pat scopes out and brings a recommendation, how do you empower each of you sitting at this table that are board members to speak more into each of what's brought to the table, and not feel, and this is my language, but that the firm fist coming from Pat versus you all providing input into.
I mean, from my perspective, as far as running a meeting, I could just go around and ask each member for comments and participation. That's an easy fix.
Right.
From just the
That
operation of
helps.
the meeting.
To make sure you all feel comfortable, or that you know you need to be sharing your insight into this.
Plus, we had all those pandemic meetings which didn't lend themselves well to anything.
Right, and we're coming off of that, so that could be maybe where for more than one of you shared about, you just wish we had more board members participating more in the discussion. So, you know, any ideas on how to help that, because I know I've been in that, you know, that role where you scope it out, you do all your research, you present it, you know, to the board. What are other things that would be helpful for you in those discussions and board meetings?
Well, it certainly wasn't me that made that comment, because I think the way I perceive it's working is the management has antennas throughout their organization, sales and marketing. You know, people come into ideas and they percolate and they get to Pat. And if it makes sense, then he calls in Kristen and she figures out what, if we want to proceed and if we do, what the problems may or may not be. And she contacts each of us and, you know, tells us what's up. And we have an opportunity to agree or object. Seems to me to be working pretty well.
So yeah, I don't know if it's, do people not feel comfortable speaking up, or is it just that?
Yeah, I think it was just more than one person mentioned that they wish we had more participation, more group discussion in the decision-making piece. So I don't know where that's coming from, but it sounds like it's not as.
Well, I can certainly, I mean, I'll just make that a point.
Yeah.
For each thing, just to kind of make sure that everybody has their opportunity to weigh in.
Okay. Yeah, good deal. One of the weaknesses, and I think this is really probably more of a threat at this point in time, rather than a weakness, but it showed up when we were talking, and that's really the need for making sure that we are very proactive with succession planning, both at the board and the team level. So this is making sure we're preparing for always, it doesn't matter what the situation is, that we always have really good succession planning going on. So any conversation or comments or recommendations there about that?
I know at the board level, I think it's twofold. It's, I mean, you can only do so much, right, because it's an elected position. But being able to have, you know, and I've talked about this with Pat, not really a job description, but kind of roles and responsibilities, like what does a board member do? So that, you know, if somebody asks you about it in the community, you can speak to it and, you know, kind of try to find other interested parties within the community that would be willing and interested to serve on the board. And then again, secondarily, it's the leadership within the board, right? Board chair, secretary, treasurer, committees, you know, because we've got the finance committee and the marketing committee. So, you know, we are so few on the board that, you know, I think we all have to kind of take turns at these different positions and kind of shuffle things around. So that's, and I think we do that after an election, correct?
Correct.
So every 2 years, that kind of shifts and changes. So then it's just communicating with the board members to see what where their interest lies on committees and then in board leadership.
And you're gonna see under opportunities, I think it is that some of you shared just the need for additional board education. That when you're serving a 6-year term, it's easy to forget the stuff you learned in orientation. And so some type of annual refresher training, which would, you pull those things into that real easily, and that would meet that need as well. So always just making sure that you've always got good discussion going around about if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, what's going to happen. On the staff side, leadership training, making sure you're always, providing good, strong executive level leadership training is always important, but any other ideas or comments about
And you have
succession?
an internal succession planning document,
I
right?
sent that to the board a few months ago that so internally, we've got succession plans at each level of the organization, to the management level. From the supervisory side, it depends on just the needs of the time and turnover within the staff and that sort of thing.
Okay, yeah, so I think making sure you're just continuing to talk about that, I think that would solve that need. And I mean, this is probably more of a threat, honestly, than a weakness at this point in time, but making sure that you're all feeling comfortable that you're talking about that. It's just any good business is doing that. And
Kristen,
then,
it seems like one thing that maybe you guys do informally, kind of on your sort of the board succession thing is, I think, or maybe it's just how you're appointing folks to committees, but I think you all do a pretty good job of sort of identifying board members' skill sets and then utilizing them in various places. And I think, for example, with Jody working on the, aquatic center deal, which was more of a, business deal.
Mhm.
And so it made sense to have Jody kind of take the lead there because, his long experience being, a business guy. And so I think you all do a good job of sort of putting people in the right places, I guess. But, I don't know, maybe that should be more formal or less formal than you all do it now. But it does strike me that's the one, the one thing that, when you think of the five of you, you all have a pretty diverse skill set of where you come from. And so I think taking advantage of that is really a thing that, I think you all do a pretty good job of maybe trying to make it a little more conscious, because again, if you've got, someone who's, done event planning, well, that's obviously, brings unique insight. Or if you've got someone who's actually, been a real life politician, those are, things and skill sets that being able to take advantage of them strikes me something,
Mhm.
that you all can do to help provide, I don't want to say take some of the burden off, but provide, extra layer of sounding or something. So
it really helps to identify who best serves on certain initiatives or committees when you have that. I've done the strengths finders with boards and put them into the quadrants to show who's strongest in relationship building, who's the strongest with strategic. So might be something you just look at someday. That's kind of fun exercise to go through, who are better in different positions. Yeah. And this last one just came up as not a real negative in a sense of we need to make a change, but that we've had some, it's all about the ability to participate. Illnesses and COVID's it clearly had this as well. So I think it's just something to be cognizant of is it's good that you're thinking about we want full board participation on a consistent basis, but it can cause when you have one part of it, especially with such a small board, it can cause a little bit of gap if people aren't able to participate. So those were really the biggest weaknesses. The top three are really the most important. We've had some good, robust discussion about that. So I think we'll probably land with some good initiatives coming out of that. Any comments about any of these before we move to?
Before I forget, remind me what we do in terms of annual reviews for
is that,
our staff.
oh,
Cody?
Staff annual reviews, we do them each year. They're not tied to any annual increases or anything like that, but they happen at the same time that we go into first of the fiscal year, so December. Usually all the managers complete theirs end of November, kind of into December, and then issue them to all staff members at that point in time in December, usually sometime going to January, but
And that happens every year,
annually, yep,
everybody.
for everybody, yep.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, let's get to some fun stuff. So opportunities, you're all looking forward to coming with a good plan in place that you all have to be able to use to guide where we're going. So our goal by the end of today is to pull together some really nice, good goals and initiatives and that plan, you know, on what that looks like. So that was an opportunity that many of you shared. You're excited to be able to get that plan. Although you've had a plan and you haven't felt like you're floundering because you don't have anything, it's nice to now revisit it and do that. So another opportunity we've already talked about today is look for some land opportunities and get some land purchase. And so any additional comments about the land purchase? I know we talked about it a little
Well,
bit.
it's really just, hey, Chase.
I have
On your
ideas, give me
radar.
the checkbook. Let's go.
If you see something, let us know.
Yeah. Some of you have shared, you know, whether that's looking at something where we could do some type of joint venture, whether it's looking at, you know, another piece of property locally of a business that's vacating, whatever.
ITD? What's going on there?
Probably 3 years out, but they'll do either an auction or that one's one where a land swap could be a possible play. Find something else that fits them anywhere in Idaho. Probably needs to be somewhere relatively close, but and do a swap for their 38 acres, 40 acres, whatever it is. And, you know, RFP or something from there, but it's a giant opportunity that,
They're close to the river, they're close to the Greenbelt.
Yeah.
They're on State Street.
Yeah.
Close to.
multimodal
Fairview.
corridor,
Yeah, Right.
quick,
Where is it, Chase?
ITD's campus, State and Whitewater.
Yeah.
So it came out in the news that they're going to work on transitioning to somewhere, and that could be down to the HP campus, now the State of Idaho campus or whatever that is. And then they would need to follow their processes to dispose of the property for their highest and best use or profit, I guess, whatever.
Although there is a lot more flexibility with government entities, there are a number of statutes that depending on if it was us and what we were going to use it for, a lot of times there are exceptions to doing deals with other government entities.
So
We used to use CCDC for that all the time, but now they're limited in terms of what they can do.
way out of the box when Department of Lands sold all the buildings that they own downtown and some parking lots, things like that. What they did with the funds, what they decided was their mission was to go out and purchase timberland to keep harvesting that long-term to feed the schools, basically, right? If we were to go and buy a bunch of timberland and swap them, I don't know if that's even possible, but that could be a solution to get around or to not have to go through the public auction process and then end up with land that we could then put towards our mission. So again, don't know if it's even legal, but that is something that would fit their end game and make it so that it might simplify processes.
And it sounds like now's the time to start having some of those conversations. Yeah, I am aware of employees that were working out of that building and have all moved to HP campus already, so they've already started that move.
What about the CWI land?
Everything I've heard, they still plan on doing something there.
Hey, Chase, I talked to Nick Miller, who moved from Boise State. He's going to be in charge of the Boise campus. And I asked him how much of that 10-acre parcel that he envisioned they would use. He thinks it's going to be less than 3 acres. And they would look to partner with somebody like us because what they don't have right now is the funds to build the buildings that they need. So I'd like to set up something maybe with you and Nick, maybe further explore it.
Yeah, we represent CWI, and my partner Adam is working with them on their other buildings. And the 10-acre parcel has been sort of on a back burner just because they've been focusing on the other ones, but yeah, they're looking at that side as well. And I think there's certainly no reason not to have discussions with them. You know, they got a lot of irons in the fire, so a lot of things they're trying to get done.
But they are more focused on Nampa first.
Exactly.
And then Boise.
Right.
What about those
Talking
other
about that
properties?
Bob Rice facility.
Yes.
Yeah. What about what?
You know, there's like that old hotel on the river.
We're old enough
Are
to call it
those-
that.
It's the
Cottonwood?
old Shiloh / Cotton Tree Inn.
Yeah.
It's all,
Yeah, isn't it
Yeah.
being remodeled into single family, like not single family,
low income.
just residential units, long-term residential? I think it's going through conversion right now.
Yeah.
Is the property that ITD has, is that far enough away from downtown that it wouldn't be a good hotel partner, or would it? Is there an opportunity to purchase the land and have that be a plus to attract a hotel?
That's what you'd have to do. Draw more hotels closer by there.
7-minute drive. Too far for a convention, really?
It would position us at a
It's
disadvantage.
almost
but-
as far as the riverside. You know, I mean, two different
Right.
directions,
Right.
but the riverside's not that far. I mean, nothing really, I mean, the airport's 3 miles away, so.
Other opportunities is marketing and public relations plans. And a lot of this is around, educating. And I'd love to have a little more discussion, because I think most of you brought this up, is that the need to educate the stakeholders? Is it a need to just attract business? What are the big needs around marketing and public relations?
To attract new business, hopefully.
Okay,
But we still have to tell our story to the general public. They have no idea that we contribute 35 million this year to the economy. That's a big number.
So, Pat, am I right that you guys are sort of at capacity, basically, in terms of? We are.
For the rest of this year.
What's your question?
Well, I guess I'm sort of thinking about marketing and public relations plans. I mean,
Well, I guess my
you
question.
can't, I don't know what you do if you're, I guess I don't know what your focus is if you can't provide more
Can't
services
take
to me
on
because you're
more.
already full. I
Is
just don't know, you know.
Well, this is where I need more help from the board, because
Right.
over the years, I mean, we've done community engagement committees, we've had people sit around the table, local businesses and whatnot. I mean, I need to better understand who it is you want to reach. We don't have the impact to the general public like hospitals do or city governments do. I mean, we operate facilities that brings a lot of people in, and the nonprofits that uses the thousands and thousands of people that come here every year know Boise Center. And I'm struggling because I don't know what it is.
Back a few years, when we had a referendum in the city to raise money for an expansion. The referendum failed because they had no idea who we were and why we were raising the money. So people, you have to do marketing to people. The first people I would do marketing to are internal. Because everybody here should know, or should be on the same page. And then we start outside, because everybody here is the first representative that many of these people will meet. We've had a great run, but I still think they should know what is going on at the board level.
So maybe more public relations and education rather than focus on marketing to get more people for conventions and spaces that we
Yeah, we
don't have available.
we have to keep marketing for conventions. You know, when I joined the board, we were full. We couldn't expand fast enough. But we couldn't get any money to do it. And now that we have all this money, we should be doing something with it. Because if we're trying to tell people that we're here to provide prosperity for people here, and then they find out we have $20 million in the bank. That shouldn't be in the bank, that should be in circulation.
I wonder if there isn't an opportunity, I'm just thinking about the number of times I walk in this building and it's pretty consistently for a nonprofit, a cause. I wonder if there's an opportunity to add some PR around, you know, we were a partner in helping our nonprofits raise this much money in a year, or, you know, some good positive where people see you as a true community partner and not just a business that's, you know, booking convention space. And so I think it does sound like it might be more a telling your story, a public relations, community impact, telling your story more than we need people to understand what we do.
And who would we be telling that to? I mean, that's the question, you know, is it Jane Doe?
I think it's the general public, maybe. I don't know, because if you just think about all these people that you're having conversations with, collaborative partners, that's a really good question to pose to yourselves, is who do you consistently find that if they really understand your impact would be more supportive of what you're bringing to the table?
Can I finish my thought for a second? We were not able to tell our story, as I remember, because we can't promote ourselves. Is that right?
Well, it was the way we did it the first time around in 2003. That we did end up getting sued because of the marketing materials we distributed. We had consultants who helped us with that, and we got taken down a road we probably shouldn't have gone. But we can tell our story, and we do it all the time. That's the marketing side of what we do. I mean, again, I mean, if the message, if the purpose is to promote the board to the community and what you all do as the district, you know, that's sort of one thing. I mean, people, when they come here, they don't ask us, I mean, people do, they assume we're city owned or county owned. They really don't know who owns us, but they're really, really happy with the results. You know, we've tried to coordinate some dollar value to the nonprofits in the community, but a lot of the nonprofits don't necessarily want that promoted. And so, you know, literally the thousands of people who come to our events and have a great time, they raise, you know, these nonprofits have raised, in fact, this year they have raised record amount of money. We get told that practically every event. They don't want to tell us how much, but they tell us that it's a record. So, you know, the district, short of between 2008 and 2010, and High remembers those days, I think Jim remembers some of it too, but High particularly.
Oh, yes.
We were in the news a lot, and our board meetings had upwards of 100 people. And quite frankly, not a very good time. But, you know, normally we want to do the right thing for the community. We want to do the right thing for the board. And operating that way has allowed us to maintain a very high level of respect within the community and the message that we send. Historically, that's been enough. That's been what a lot of the board members have wanted, is to maintain status quo is probably the wrong term, but maintain that visibility that we currently maintain and that level of respect. So I don't know.
Yeah, help Pat out here.
Well-
Where are we needing?
Yeah, I memean, that's my question is it the Boise Center or the district? Is it to stakeholders or is it to John Q. Public? Because if it's, you know, the board to John Q. Public, good luck. I mean, I knocked on a lot of doors when I was campaigning and there was very little understanding. And even after I explained it, there was very little understanding. They were talking to me about property taxes and roadways and things like that. So I think that's a heavy lift, especially with no media outcome. I mean, it's not like we're trying to get a bond passed or we're trying to build something. I mean, so to just go market and say, hey, this is who we are and what we've done to John Q. Public, I think that's a lot of dollars spent with not a lot of result. If it's to stakeholders to, you know, build some more camaraderie and stuff like that, well, that's something that I think would make a little more sense than just Joe Schmo. That's my opinion.
I think to High's point about what we have in the bank, that's something that I think is quite frankly one of the easiest things to explain, and I try to do that every month at our board meetings. That yes, we have a significant amount of money in our accounts, but in 2016 we can buy down debt. It's the 10-year mark from 2016 when we took out the bonds. If the board chooses, that's one of the options for the board, is to buy down debt if that makes the most sense at the time. The fact that we have a solid capital plan, that money is well invested within the facilities, that again maintains the reputation that you all expect us to maintain with our partners and our guests. So while it sounds like a lot of money, quite frankly, those funds can be used for several things that maintains the facilities. And again, this building is 30 years old, 32 now, almost 33. And requiring more and more maintenance. Boise Center East is going to start requiring more and more on an annual basis. So that's the purpose of those funds, is to protect the district so that we don't find ourselves in situations like we found ourselves in 2003. And quite frankly, the laws have been changed. The board helped change those when we were able to do Boise Center East. So I think that's the message that I want very clear to the public, and that from the board is, look, yes, we have this money, but we have things that we plan to do with it. And quite frankly, I'm really proud of that we're in that position and that we can take that position with our constituents. We have something to show for that investment. We've got an aquatic center that we're currently committed $7 million to. So we have projects that again, I would hope the board is proud of that we're participating in. And I see that lined out in the future. So again, the board will have options, certainly, on how they want to disperse those funds. In fact, I don't think we stop at just the swimming pool at the aquatic center. I think it's a prime opportunity for the district board to consider at some point building our own food and beverage facilities out there, our own concession area. It's a great, in my opinion, it's a great investment to garner the revenue that's gonna be lost out there to food trucks or the sports bar across the street or whatever it is. So again, there's plans, there's discussion.
I can't remember them discussing this. Was there a discussion on concessions out there?
It's been more internal than external because we wanted to wait and see exactly how the footprint of the swimming pool. But we've got that whole third of the site that's available to us. And yeah, we've talked about it. In fact, when we came back from Salt Lake City last year, we talked about it. Again, long-term, nothing even on napkins at this point. Well, I guess a little more than napkins. But yeah, we've tried to plot out, but we want to wait and see exactly how the site fits. So.
Me too.
And that would be an example where you vet it out and then bring it to the board for discussion.
Can you fit maybe all these three, or the last one, into the thing we discussed on the last slide or 2 slides ago about the creating the group of public entities that are doing stuff? So, you know, maybe if the public entities are all meeting to discuss stuff, maybe that's an opportunity to, well, potentially doing all those things, but particularly, you know, so some sort of maybe the marketing, public relations stuff, but people, I'm assuming, even though we're probably having just one person from each of the things, so it's not technically going to be a public meeting for any of the entities, it'll nonetheless probably be a public meeting in the sense that, you'll have, I'm guessing, the public there for those meetings, maybe not, I don't know. I don't know how you would envision any of that happening, but there's at least an opportunity coming out of all that to do your other stuff, maybe.
Well, and I do want to point out that one of the communities that has reached out in the past has been Meridian. I've spoken with various members of the Meridian Chamber and City Hall over the years, again, prior to COVID, as they were trying to take a look at auditorium districts or what we do and how we do it. So, they've been a very proactive partner with us. And I think reaching out to the city of Eagle and talking to the mayor's office. And in fact, the person I met with last week, he and I discussed how to build some of this coalition. He was describing up in Lewiston, a coalition of various governmental agencies that came together and somebody built some sports fields, somebody else built some indoor space with and that's where the discussion of the school districts came in to help with kids. And so, the elephant was this big, but everybody had money that could take a bite out of the elephant. And there was a coalition of several agencies up in that area. I think it was just last year that they were able to get it going. And so he had other examples of getting that together. And as we were talking about the sports park in Eagle, the family who wants to build a hockey arena over at the fairgrounds, are there opportunities? And I asked them to reach out and see if, like Stacy Dubila wants to build an indoor track type facility. So again, and then after visiting Mesa, it's like, this would be kind of cool to see a bunch of groups come together. So that conversation was started and I just need to follow up, so.
Very good. All right, so any other comments about marketing and public relations plans? It's still a little foggy, I think, but
I would just add, kind of as I'm looking at the mission statement there's kind of 2 competing agendas between local community support and then economic impact. And as we look at our booking policies here, we allow local groups to book within 12 months, but conventions to book outside of that. Well, those nonprofits that we're talking about, all those dollars raised, something to be mindful of as we continue to be successful in the convention market. It continues to create less space for those types of community events. So they don't have the amount of square footage or space to hold a big gala or event like that as well. So it's something that we've constantly always had to kind of look at our calendar in that way and kind of trying to go, okay, well, these are really good community events, but what is their opportunity out there in the convention market for these months, and possibly moving some of those galas to different months or outside of that has put pressure on them in that way to raise money.
and is what I'm hearing correct is that market for the convention is going to always have this obstacle until we get more hotel rooms.
So more space would be local, and that's where, conversations with maybe the city again, I don't know, I think that I saw something about the library. There's starting conversations about the library project again. In the past, there was a potential to partner with them on some event space at the library. So where the galas could be.
Exactly, and it's the amount of square feet that they need to have that type
Yeah.
of an event. There's just nowhere else besides Boise Center for them to go.
Right.
So that would creating an opportunity for
Mhm.
something else where it has a different booking window or booking policy that allows them to. And I know Chamber feels that way when they're booking speakers, national speakers, they can only get them within the year. If they want to get somebody 18 months out, their date for us on the calendar is dependent upon conventions and all that kind of stuff, so.
Okay. We've talked about this, I think, at great length. I definitely think one of the initiatives that'll probably land is formalize some type of a coalition of community leaders, whatever that looks like. But this definitely came up as an opportunity to just continue to strengthen those relationships. Again, we've talked about this one for the most part, and that's just education on the value for stakeholders. This is I think, gonna always be a opportunity just based on the lack of understanding of what the auditorium district does provide. Board education, I've mentioned that, the showed up is some of you just want some continued education. Anyone want to speak to additional needs beside what I've mentioned? Just that little bit of an annual refresher. Good. Okay.
I would say, yeah, we do that for most of my public entity clients. We'll do, kind of technical refreshers on some of the, open meeting laws and stuff. And then, a lot of times depending on what the board's interested in, the executive director or whoever else will do something on whatever the primary kind of a strategic plan update little thing or something. But every board's different as to what it is they want to see, and some people want something totally technical and others want something a little more fun. So
Probably isn't a huge, long educational thing, but I would be curious to know more about our lobbyists, what they do. Are they just here to provide us information that is from over there, or can they actively lobby for things that might make it better for the center, being, some of the issues that make it so California can't pay to come here? Like, what are they being retained for? So I'd be interested in that.
Well, we have to be careful about spreading our news too much in the legislature, especially.
Right.
They don't like, it's a generalization, but most of the legislators do not like Boise. So it would be hard to win them over.
Right. I'm just wondering why there's two people at our meeting every month and what the purpose is.
Sure.
Not
Word
good, bad,
education.
one way or the other. I just want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that'd be good.
they keep a pulse on what's happening over at the legislature. Let us know if there's any bills, certainly during session, that would be impactful to us. A lot of those could be urban renewal, messing with our statute. It was more of an issue when the stadium was in the news. There was talk about them fiddling with it to remove sports arenas from our state statute, because if you read it, it's right in there. And then also, if there is some piece of legislation that could impact us, then they can go have conversations.
Particularly urban renewal. Again, we get lumped in as a government agency with other types of government agencies. So they help set up luncheons that I get to go to and meet different legislators and leadership to explain how different the auditorium district is from maybe some other governmental agencies that the legislators are taking some aim at, and why we're different, and how some of their decisions have unintended consequences, or if they were intended, to talk them out of it. So, and then as part of the retainer, they come to the meetings to make sure they're up on the topics that the board, has. And, during session, they try to, do updates during session for us.
I assume that they're on a retainer.
Sir.
So if they choose to come here, they're on their own nickel basement. And so I wonder why they come for a couple hours when there's nothing on the agenda, but they choose to do it, and that's good. I supported hiring them, and I think we tried to hire a preeminent firm so that we would be protected from stuff that was coming down the line a couple of years ago. The various legislative committees were deciding how Boise City elections are going to be run, what the threshold is for a bond. And when I came on the board, I was just kind of stunned. Who's in charge here? And so what I think Reberger Sullivan, is that the former name, does for me is gives me some comfort. We'll find out before we read it in the paper.
And I wasn't leaning one way or the other on having them at all. I just wanted to know.
Board education, it might be good to add to the. annual
It
board
probably was
education.
added. So it's just.
And one of the reasons we hired him was for offensive purposes, not just defensive, because previously when something would happen in the legislature, we'd be reactive to it. But because we hired a preeminent firm, we can leverage their relationships to be a little bit offensive or proactive in making sure that those notions that come from, the podunk legislator who wants to shut down all taxing districts or whatever, they can use their relationships to kill it before it even gains traction.
Getting back to Jody's point that he made, like maybe in the first 10 minutes we started this, and you had mentioned, the legislation and the folks from California who can't come here, et cetera. And that's, frankly, maybe something we need to revisit with them a little more, because they provided some insight on those bills and where they were going. And eventually what happened is, I think all those lawsuits are still ongoing on both the transgender bills. So, it's all still semi in limbo, but that's something they can really add some insight for is, what other bills are out there and, what other fun stuff are people going to be upset with us about.
Very good. Okay. We.
I, all due respect, whenever we pay those people to babysit the legislators, isn't enough. All of us have had some interaction with the legislature, and I think it's all equally negative, or certainly for me, in 30 years of going up there.
And I know we've talked about this, but have we invited legislators over for breakfast or lunch, especially the chairman?
Not for a long time, because particularly prior to COVID, Pat and John were doing a great, I was meeting with several legislators during session and leadership. So we haven't invited over here, but yes, particularly prior to COVID, we were meeting fairly regularly.
Yeah.
This year, honestly, it was kind of chaotic. So yes, I do meet with them during session. It's just not here.
Well, I've just heard that the new class that's coming in to the legislature will be the biggest class so far. So there's going to be a big turnover.
I will tell you that the legislature is here, the legislators are here a lot. You probably remember, right?
Yeah.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, they're here, not at my invitation, but at whatever group happens to be hosting them that particular day.
And everybody likes coming here for lunch, believe me, they're all here.
I've had the pleasure of talking to some of them, and again, when I see Pat and John, and Phil, even during this session, they were telling me that they were here practically every day for like 3 weeks. So I asked them, I said, keep me posted on the food quality, because, they got tired of chicken and salads.
Well, that's something maybe we could talk to them about and see if it.
Yeah.
would be advisable or not, you know, it's kind of one of those things. If you're under the radar, you're under the radar.
All right, the next opportunity, and we've again, talked already about this, but how do we move forward with our plans of projects, whatever we want to do? If our major decision makers out there that we're leaning on aren't gonna come to success for us. So how do we overcome those obstacles? Any additional comments? We've talked about this a lot already, but additional comments around how do we just keep exploring new things without feeling frustrated with this inability to influence commissioners or other decision makers, owners of the private sector of those pieces. Y'all good with this one?
I think from a cash flow perspective, one of them is, right, if the partners aren't willing to move forward with this, then that means it takes more of our cash.
Yes, absolutely. So hence one good reason to have some additional cash is it may require that, but yeah, is there, and maybe that's a good discussion is how much are we willing to do on our own? You know, what does that look like? Let's be realistic about what this really would look like if we didn't have these collaborative partners.
Is the outlet mall outside of our boundaries?
It is within. Good question. I need to look.
That's a good
Is
question.
the outlet mall within our boundaries?
I think it is, but let me look at the map. to make sure.
That certainly is an opportunity.
They have the hockey, they have the ice out there already.
Developer who bought it, and I had some conversations.
I'm just trying to think of other land that's.
Mhm. Right.
You know, on this whole area of working with partners and whatnot, my recollection of the Almquist proposal was that it was for the complete development of the entire property.
Grounds. Yep.
And the reason, and we, looking around the room, it seemed to me, everybody thought, you know, there were a lot of good ideas and they had great representation. And they did have a professional team, as I recall, a soccer team.
Yeah.
But anyway, we weren't interested because it was way bigger than we could do on our own. And to take the lead on it would require all the money we had, and we'd have to go out and spend. We just didn't have the appetite to lead it. But so a project percolates up and it gets to us. And if we want to move forward, we can lead. But that project was, I don't know, 3, 4, 500 million or something. And we're in current, are we still in a dip on our debt capacity?
One more year.
Yeah, we're, by the time we do the next project, by the time the next project is actually ready to be done, we'll have capacity. I mean, it's gonna take, however long it's gonna take.
Well, yeah, well, we're in the third year of that 3-year cycle.
So I'm just playing up on Anne Marie's point. I mean, I think we can participate in a lot of projects if we choose to.
Right.
There's not a shortage. And then we'll just bring people along if that's necessary. And the Aquatic Center is a great project for many reasons, but one, we're doing something. And we're uniformly aboard now who wants to do stuff. And so
Right, yeah.
my
there's not
sense
a-
of things is, you know, let's get this aquatic center successfully up and going, and about that time, we start getting back our bonding capacity and think big again.
outlet malls are in the district. I just looked it up, but is also in the new urban renewal gateway district that the city formed 3 years ago. So that would overlap too if we were to work with, I guess, CCDC, right? Yeah, formed, not city, sorry. But yeah, so that's out there as well. And they put a lot of infrastructure in already.
It's an opportunity. It's right off the freeway.
There's already a hotel across the street, right?
And so to remind everybody, with all the various tweaks to the urban renewal statutes that the legislature has done,
And so.
CCDC's ability to partner with us is limited to, well, I shouldn't say limited, but they are, it sounds like it's a bad thing, but they are, they're able to build parking garages and build infrastructure. So we would need to do, to the extent we were doing whatever the hell, we're building something, whatever it is out there, we would need to build the actual thing ourselves, but CCDC could
Parking.
provide parking and provide infrastructure. So
If it's all fuzzy, but wasn't there like a dollar limit?
the dollar limit is on the amount they can spend for like public buildings and stuff. So
Okay.
again, I'm just kind of assuming, given whatever it is we're gonna be, that we're gonna be way in excess of that. So effectively, but there is no limit on, there's no limit on their ability to provide parking, which, any parking garage now is 10, 15 million bucks or more, so.
40,000 per stall.
So.
And there may be a discussion and a little research is what fits your comfort zone, right? Like when opportunities come your way, I know you already have this vetting process, but when we talk about, is the project too big for us? What conditions need to come with it if we want to even entertain something like that? There might be some good discussion that could be had there. And then the last one here is coalition to study the hotel room availability. We've talked about this. We've landed in a good spot right there with that being an opportunity. And then just the enhancement of transportation when needed to get around hotels. Is there any further conversation about that? I know we offer that, Pat mentioned already. And that's really just building that relationship and making sure they know we're collaborative partners there. Any further conversations around that?
I mean, with the transportation, I know we did it for CTSE, CSTE.
Epidemiologist.
Epidemiologist.
Some acronym.
And I know the CVB has a master hotel contract to try to reduce the issue there. So I don't know if it would be, could we be more proactive with offering transportation?
You have the
And
shuttle
telling the
service
CVB.
available when needed and,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know.
Sherry's aware of it, and it hasn't come up as a stumbling block of late. But both her and Ally have that in their quiver if they need it.
I mean, maybe we get a little Boise Center shuttle. Drive it around.
ERT has a bunch of red ones we could probably just use.
Back to, when Chase brought up the State Street, that property there. So is there if you all, if you're gonna build more space, more convention space, does it have to be standalone? I mean, does it, how far, if we built something at the fairgrounds, does that then connect with this somehow, or is it totally separate? Will people not view 100,000 square feet there and here as connected? I don't know how any of that works.
Well, Salt Lake is a good example. When they built the Salt Palace, and then they have another venue down in, I think it's Sandy. Mountain America Center, that's more of the trade show, public show space. And then you've got the Salt Palace that's big convention center with the big hotels around it. So you probably wouldn't do something concurrently, although I guess it's possible. But
Citywide stuff they've done like that, where they put them in two different buildings for citywide stuff, like the Olympics or something.
yeah, but I mean, for just normal, I mean,
You want to get a big convention, you need to have it all together, basically.
pretty much.
Okay.
But, you know, you build another facility with 50,000 square feet of available just meeting space. You know, all of a sudden we can shift a lot of our local events into that facility.
And that was.
And then
that was
use this facility for more of the true convention. So you've got the hotel rooms downtown, but you've got the food and beverage facility basically.
What Salt Lake books those is they have the Salt Palace as a 12-month booking window, so they focus mostly on conventions, and then 18 months for the Mountain America Center, so it allows local groups, as to what I was just talking about with chambers and wanting to book speakers. They have more of that, okay, I can get on the books within 18 months and plan my event for the next year. It creates a little bit more avenue, but it gives them if they get a big convention that wants that, they could have two components or two regions in the same city or something. You could, but realistically, being that far apart, you'd want to do two separate events.
They market them completely independently of each other.
They do market, but I would assume the sales team and the CVB know that those are both assets that they can pull from if they get something that's a citywide.
Or it could be an annex, you could create an annex type concept.
So if you had a facility, like with the trade show space, a lot of the conventions have a trade show component, and you'd want those in the same building.
We're still restricted by how big of a convention we can have.
Right.
Because traditionally, I mean, for a true convention, you meet them, you feed them, and you exhibit them. So, you know, the ballroom, you have exhibition going on in the ballroom. We can feed them over in East, and then you use all your breakout space for classes.
So in any of those other locations, whether it be State Street, Fairgrounds, Outlet Mall, you know, I mean, that would make more sense, I think, bummer part is that you could build a bigger facility, but it would make more sense for local events where you wouldn't have the convention traffic, because certainly having convention people downtown, stuff to do when they're staying in hotels, because most of the hotels are here, makes more sense. It's just there'd be more square footage to build a bigger facility at these other locations.
So
Those would be more local events,
So
right?
the only way to really get bigger conventions, whatever it is, I guess, is to move everything somewhere else or somehow find a way to put another 100,000 square feet somewhere around us along with a 1,000-room hotel.
Correct. But as Cody pointed out, we keep piecemealing downtown. It's all we're doing is piecemealing. So, I mean, ideally, you find a space for 300,000 square feet or whatever of a big convention, new convention center, and a 1,000-room hotel next door. And
Bummer
somebody
part
with
is
really
that-
deep pockets.
Yeah, the bummer part is that you lose the downtown
Walkability.
walkability, people do stuff, people stay later, you know, pre and post conference. So, you know, that's the bummer part that you would lose. And I know that the downtown businesses really hate that, you know.
Historically, if you build a convention center, you're gonna get those amenities to come up, but it's gonna take years
Yeah.
for that to develop around it, and to create that same environment we currently already have now.
And if you ever vacated this, is there a large risk that a major competitor could come in and, I mean, what would you do with this space if you ever vacated it?
There are certain agencies within the community that need more space currently. And there's an opportunity that they would buy our space to fulfill their needs. That would have nothing to do with the hospitality business.
Okay, let's go to threats. This is really more just awareness. We typically find things that land in the threat area is just a good discussion, a recognition of risk and what they are. So we talked about this, Jody alluded to this a little bit, but there is this investment in large projects, right? It's always a threat if we invest in something big and it ends up not being successful. So that's one threat. the political landscape, I think this probably shows up on every one of your SWOT analysis you ever do, is it's just what if we get political agendas come in, lack of understanding, all of that is a little bit of that. Certainly, if something happens and our funding source from hotel tax goes away, that's a threat. What happens, we've already talked about this, if a large competitor with a hotel and convention space moves in, what does that do for us? We're blessed to have Mike to make sure that we stay within statute, and but if we ever violated that, that certainly is a threat to what we have. And then I think there is just this little threat of a complete lack of understanding of what we do, who we are, what's our purpose. And I mean, clearly, you know, what do we do to hedge against all of these? You know, you've certainly worked well in just my conversations with you about recognizing this is a threat, recognizing what we do to at least do what we can to make sure that we're paying attention to these. So that for the most part is threats. Any other big threats that you've thought of since we talked that didn't land on this list?
Do we ever receive a coordinated communication from the hoteliers to lower the tax rate?
We haven't received anything within the last couple of years. Every once in a while, there's a random inquiry, but there hasn't been anything formal or anything direct. I mean,
Do we set that tax rate?
pardon me?
Do we set the tax rate?
The statute is set at maximum 5%, then the board can vote to raise or lower. Well, it maxes at 5%, and it was 2008. I remember, I think it was 2000. I'd have to go back and look, 2007 or 2008 when it had been at 4, they took it to 5. Back 30 years ago, it was 2%. So it's varied over the years, but it's been at 5 for the last several years, but it's board discretion. Statutorily set board discretion to go to whatever level up to 5.
Okay, so I think this is the most important part of is how do we prioritize, right? There's lots of great ideas. How do we get together? So what we're going to do is just take a quick 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to actually work to actually come up with what are the most important things that need to land in this plan that we're all working with. And so I'll work with you a little bit on that, but do a real quick 5-minute break.
I'm gonna take a walk.
Right now, I think they're just buying covered land place. Yeah, they did what's the one hotel right there on Vista?
Just wanted to do a really big project.
Oh, right. I know. I'm just thinking about a 1,000-room hotel right now. Which Gardner could do. But yeah, I think they bought that one just because the land price was really cheap. And yeah, I think the best one would have been the 40 acres right below Vista.
Yeah.
You turn off there,
I know that the
close to the airport.
Vista Neighborhood Association reached out to me at some point. The stadium and stuff was going on. Why don't you build it out here?
He wasn't the seller at that point.
No, he was just a Vista
Yeah.
Neighborhood Association president. I think.
But I mean, outlets make a lot of sense. A lot of the infrastructure is already there.
Yeah.
Freeway, airport's 2 minutes away.
Tell
Grace, I know I'm an observer today, but we've had Pat in to talk to our committee on some things. Just get plugged in and see what we're doing. I mean, I know you're focusing on your district right now, but we've got money coming and we are looking at establishing our district. And I think there needs to be a partnership between the two districts. And we even asked Pat about, what's the possibility of expanding your district. And that seems like it's a bigger lift. Establishing a new district, so you gotta get more voters involved. So
That's true.
I mean, just, Meridian's the center.
I was talking to
Of the valley.
Ashley about it and, 10-mile south side is 90 acres that's already terraced.
Yep.
And they already want to do hotels and some big centers.
And we're not looking to be the convention center piece. We're hearing a lot of things about the multi-use sports facility, things that we can do to meet the local needs. That, it's not necessarily needing that huge hotel space, but you've seen it. I mean, was there 5, 6 hotels under construction in Meridian that are not in any district right now with 2 to 3 others in development plans?
That's great.
So, and I think Meridian's very interested in some more of that sports destination type deal that could use a little bit more space than necessarily in a downtown, more city environment.
Yeah. I remember just being in sports when I was growing up and coming to state in Boise.
Mhm.
And you always have to get on a bus no matter where you're going because nothing is actually in a centralized spot.
Right.
It's a pain. Bus drivers from rural Idaho don't like it. But if you had that big thing, with the sports and then the hotels all around it, people would just
Well,
walk
and-
across. That'd be
Yeah,
great.
and I mean, the Far West, this next year, they're coming with both of their tournaments in a back-to-back week. So, the taking of everything that they've already done in the years they come, now they're coming looking at it a 10 to 14-day window that they're needing, basically in that time, 10,000 rooms. Peaking at, 1,800, 2,000 rooms a night.
Right.
So I just, that's just some of the things that, we've talked with Pat about and picked his brain. And right now we're almost ready to launch our feasibility study to collect funds for it. So.
Right. Yeah. It's a great opportunity.
And I think if we created a joint powers and we want to be able to either one could do something boundaries of the other, you created an entity which effectively encompasses both of them. So I think we might have to get a court to bless it, but I think we can make it.
The big lift is just establishing the district. Getting the
Yeah,
section
exactly.
six
You can get yours established, then we can figure out a way to play together.
Christina.
It's meeting the needs of our community.
Well, it's there.
Yeah.
We're gonna work on it.
I know, and that's what I was yesterday. And I'm like,
That's good for them.
We can go from 0 to 60.
Right, yeah,
For 2 years, not do anything, almost 3.
right. And now it's like, hurry up, guys.
I think there would be a bigger loss of control.
Keep us up.
When we get rid of that plate.
Unfortunately.
Are you still working on your bagel? No.
I have no idea.
It's kind of like.
I don't know. Well, I've heard that there's a recent commercial that someone talking about.
I go to the, I went, decided to try and this.
I like it. I mean, it's close. I mean,
Somebody's
Donnie
mentioned
and
I
his business
swear,
partner,
it's
the
the,
guy, the
I
big
don't,
guy.
and it's the
Yeah.
same
He's the owner,
last
he's one of the
company.
owners of
So I don't
the
think it's
gal that's his
last
business
people like
partner.
No, it
And,
could be two.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't
I
know
saw
that
that
smaller
there.
ones. So I did-
And then you've
Yeah.
got.
I started
South
going
Florida.
over to Cafe D'Arte, the warehouse, just because I wanted to see.
And so now.
And then next thing I was supposed to leave.
Yeah.
It's bad.
That was my point.
But
Do
the
that.
bagels.
I'll just have them word it and then have maybe you.
One drawback is we just.
Yeah, I'm.
And then,
yes.
and then some other piece, I don't know what it's called. It looks kind of like a
If you're
flower,
happy just to do it,
you know,
since I'm there.
I think we'll come up with
and
something
then it's
and
got
then.
sugar,
we
and
can
a
send it
little
out,
bit of filling.
You know, because they'll approve the plan at the next meeting.
I don't know what, it's not like the Danish like we have out here where it's got jelly filled.
Right.
All right, I think we'll go ahead and. Keep going. This is the fun part of wordsmithing and really dialing in what's the most important thing that we think about that needs to happen, that we definitely want in our plan. So I'm gonna move off of the screen, but I'm gonna have this up when we're talking about it. But what I really want to do is set the tone of the goals that land in the strategic plan don't have to be, we're gonna implement. They can be, start with phrases like this, complete a feasibility study for. So we've had a lot of ideas. I've written down a few that I think resonated, but certainly you'll have your own about what's the most important thing that we tackle. And Pat, give some guidance on what you're looking for from the board in regarding the time frame. We want to tackle 1 year, 3 year, where, Kristen and Pat, where would you like the plan to resonate in regards to timeline? We want to just focus on this near 1 year in front of us. Do you want it to show 2 different periods?
Well, for me, the aquatic center is under construction. And so, you know, it's due to open Q1 '23. And honestly, I think that's the focus right now is getting, even though we own the land, we own the building, we're really not in charge of the construction of it. So it's just working with, you know, the Idaho Competitive Aquatics to make sure that everything's going on time and that it's being successful. I mean, so far it is. I get daily updates, so on progress. So, you know, I think the short term, at least for me, is let's get that open and running. Let's get some immediate success if we can with you know, local, you know, whatever local events they have going. They've already booked 2 for '23 for competitive events. But then in conjunction with that, I think, you know, continue to work with those folks who have reached out, whether that be the folks from Meridian, you know, be a little more proactive, I think, on the land side. You know, taking a look at the opportunities that are in front of us with the land at ITD, the CWI property. Mike and I have actually talked about the CWI property over the last 6 months. Just sort of, you know, who do we contact and you know, what are their plans for that property? Seeing whatever other developers are out there. The developer I've talked to at 10 Mile, maybe be a little more proactive with reaching out with them, staying in contact with the county commissioners on fairgrounds property. You know, doing a little more research on the Eagle project. And then the consultant that I met with last week, you know, seeing if he can't help coordinate maybe a little joint effort among some of those folks that are interested in project with the Eagle, or the family with the hockey center, or Stacy with her indoor track facility, that sort of thing.
Okay, so I think we'll use this model, we'll build the goal, and then we'll have a good discussion. What's the timing around that? And so exactly what Pat said, for example, the aquatic center, we have a pretty good idea what the timing is gonna be in regards to, so the goal may be, complete construction and implement, program or whatever. So this is where I'm gonna really need all your input, is what you want your goal and your initiative to be. And so these are some examples of maybe just research something, it may be establish a process, whatever it will be. So that's all free game in regards to how we make sure that our goal makes sense to what we say we're committed to. Does that make sense?
I mean, I guess I'm kind of fuzzy on the timing thing. I mean, I think that some of these things that we can do in the next year is
Right.
these conversations and, checking in with people, but, so for
Right,
the
so we'll
shorter term,
just
but then,
put timing is 2023.
yeah, I mean, any project would have to be, with funding and everything, that would
Right.
be 3, right? 2 years to 3
Right.
years.
So sometimes the project might be just research and investigate, and you're gonna agree that we want to at least do that in 2023, but you're not committing to a decision from that.
Seems like low-lying fruit would be to use 2023 to evaluate whether a food court makes sense at the aquatic center.
Right, you
Right.
could,
Reassess in Q1 of 2024, based off the meets and stuff like that. See if it's a good spot to put money. We already own it, operate it.
and it
That's
could even
the
be,
quick, easy.
you could even go beyond identifying concession, and you can say further additional opportunities with the aquatic center, so you could even go a little bit broader than that if you wanted to.
Maybe it's another pool, maybe it's a diving well, maybe it's.
Yeah. Exactly.
Who knows?
Is there excess land there for another building, right? Could that be another component that is not aquatic based, but a different sort of indoor facility that wouldn't compete with them the same, or is that gonna be set for expansion of aquatics?
Good question, Chase, because what we've looked at internally is diving wells. Because again, the model is out of Salt Lake. It's very similar land mass and similar design of replacement. And, diving wells down there are outside. They're not covered. So it's an outdoor diving well facility that's used obviously seasonally. And then they have just this little concession area. It's not very big. Our thought was to utilize it kind of like the 110s or 120s, build something, that's 3,000, 4,000 square feet. The roll-up doors, higher end concession or a higher end kitchen, a full service kitchen rather than just a concession kitchen. So you can actually host, event, teams or coaches or party, you can do everything from, child's birthday party with pizza and hot dogs to a prime rib dinner for, coaches and officials or whatever for a really nice event. Nice being it's gonna be mostly concrete, right?
Right.
But more hardscape, but still the quality of the food and the type of meal you can serve could be pretty high end. Again, that's sort of thought behind, but again, the diving wells, there's really nowhere in the state that can host diving competitions. So it's really a matter of and this is rhetorical, I don't have the answer, is there enough of a demand for diving competition to make a difference in adding events? And I don't have none of us have the answer to that yet, so.
So I think there's only about an acre of space out there, so it's not a ton of space,
Mhm.
and there's not a lot of parking, so, if you're thinking, let's add a performing arts facility out there.
Probably not enough space.
But, so
So
I would,
let's go ahead and tackle this one, because it's the one that's the freshest and we have the most invested in right now, right? Is we need to round this one out. So it definitely, let's create the goal around the wrapping up the aquatic center. So is it, this is where I'm gonna need your input as to what do you want this goal to say? Is it finalize the implementation of the aquatic center?
Or maximize the opportunities presented by the.
Complete construction?
Completion.
Yeah, get it operational.
Yeah.
Continue to, I mean, this is a lot of stuff that they're gonna do, you know, they're in charge of the operations as far as, you know, really marketing and getting the business. So from our side, it's really just identifying if there's other facilities or other things to build out there.
What is needed from the support, the staff side on this one?
I think it's just to continue to monitor what, I mean, we've got to wait and see what level of success the aquatic center really has, and then evaluate what other places are doing. I mean, I kind of like to see what, I mean, particularly Texas, California, Arizona, you know, those are, you know, even up outside of Seattle, the one up there, see what they've got. I mean, the only thing I have to compare really is Salt Lake, which was a cool facility, but there's got to be more ingenious.
Maybe to identify what opportunities, because I remember talking with Nick and them, they thought that meeting space, just a small amount would be very well used by teams that are having meetings prior to swim meets and things like that. So identifying the food and beverage opportunity along with small meeting space may be out there.
When I first visited Greenville, North Carolina, where I got the idea on an aquatic center to begin with back at 13, their facility actually incorporated, they already had small meeting rooms as part of the total construction. The meeting room sat underneath the bleachers. And so, you know, and it was for team meetings. There was a medical room, you know, there, that sort of thing. So some sort of meeting or ancillary facility is really going to be mandated. Well, I think at some point in time, it's going to be mandatory out there. So however it gets done. And however that looks.
So maybe continue to enhance the opportunities from the aquatic center.
Can I interject something? So I'm assuming a feasibility study would have to be done before you could determine whether it's going to be food and beverage or meeting space, or how you want to utilize the undeveloped property at the aquatic center location.
Or do you have?
Or it could just be input from the operations team.
I
It'd
think
be
a
like,
feasibility study would
hey,
be over
you
the
know,
top.
we've got, every team is asking for X. And we don't have it. Can we do that?
And tracking the opportunities, kind of like we do for lost business,
Yeah.
would be like, hey, we would have had an opportunity to book meeting space down there, and having some of that data to help drive that decision.
Yeah, so we can come up with a core goal and objective. This is always the hard part, right? Is wordsmithing this. And then what happens is the team can go and create the action steps, and that could be one of, if they determine this needs to be how we're gonna go about doing this.
I think a feasibility analysis rather than a feasibility study.
There you go.
Fair enough. So feasibility analysis to determine the best use of undeveloped property
How
or
to, and
at the aquatic center.
Can we ask Brian and the team to have the food trucks report sales at each event?
I think so.
Because that would go a long ways in figuring out if this makes any sense at all.
100%.
I'd take it one step further though. I mean, not that I would just want to go take trips to Texas, California, but I think that probably just finding out when a couple of the bigger meets are taking place. And just go down and spend a day.
gain best
Seeing what it
practices.
looks
Just
like.
seeing-
what
yeah,
they
best
use, how they
practices,
use the
seeing-
facility, that's it.
Exactly, and really get a feel for it, because, you know, this is gonna be our money, I think, that we're gonna be doing. I mean, this is nothing I see. I mean, this is one portion of it that I think my opinion is that we should own and operate. But again, I wanna make sure that we have a solid.
Should I recommend that when you do check on that you also check with some of your hotel friends in that area, just to see if they get packed, as we've told we will be.
Yeah, I know Greenville did, in talking with the city guys when I was there. But yes, absolutely. I think that would be good to have some local commentary. Absolutely.
So you had an objective in a prior strategic plan, which could fit this one, is the pursue the existing expansion. You could put existing development of the aquatic center opportunity to its best possible conclusion. That's kind of how it was worded in a prior plan. So, but I think just to enhance the opportunity, I think is also some good words you can use. Anything else on the aquatic center? Timing to be 2023, probably on that one. Okay. All right, let's talk land, the purchase of land. So what would you like your goal or objective to be around that in timing?
Well, I mean, if it's like the ITD property, that's 3 years out. I think so. I think the goal would just be having Chase keep a finger on it, on the opportunities. I think we probably can touch base with, keep informed other developers who have, like the outlet mall,
Every
CMUI.
developer is watching that one, right?
Really?
ITD.
Right.
I think the only advantage could be a swap. So maybe if Mike is open to, and probably already know, but maybe reporting to us at some point what it might look like to do that process legally.
Right.
And then maybe it's a conversation with the landlord or whoever is going to control that money after the auction, what they actually want, and see if there's an opportunity where we could acquire and swap before any auction kind of process. And
That's gonna be a hot commodity, right?
yes,
Yeah.
Can we do that?
I don't know.
That's where he comes in.
Yeah, I mean, we could technically, we could technically take our reserves, for example, and buy it as an investment. I mean, as weird as that is, but we can probably figure out a way to do it in some fashion.
If it's worth it or is it risky?
That's how Parson B was.
Yeah, exactly. I think we can get there. I think we can get it done.
So Jason, I don't know if you may or may not know how it worked out at HP, but I mean, I live out behind there. So there's a lot of undeveloped land around HP. And I don't know if the state owns all of that, if they bought the whole campus, including the land that's currently being farmed.
I think
Or-
we got it all.
Because that, I mean, I don't know what the state plans to do with the undeveloped land out there.
I feel like my head is remembering 28 acres undeveloped in the back. Which is
There's, on the
substantially-
Cloverdale side, there's a whole section over there, and then on the 5 Mile side, there's a big chunk of land on the 5 Mile side.
I think the state got the whole campus in the process. And certain developers were not happy about the entire transaction.
But I don't know if there would, again, not knowing that the state has long-term thoughts on if we were to purchase land out there and swap or just purchase land. I mean, they've got parking all over the place out there, right?
And if you're talking about a multi-use sports complex facility, you're kind of at the center of Eagle, Meridian, you're a little more centrally located.
So maybe research land purchase options.
So can I ask what the purpose, assuming we're not, buying something next door, which there really isn't any, but so the purpose of buying the other land is either some kind of sporting, whatever the hell it is thing, or convention space, or those kind of the two purposes?
It'd
potential
be
two
meeting,
purposes?
it'd be meeting space, not convention space.
Well,
It'd
right,
be
meeting space.
meeting banquet space and potentially multi-purpose indoor.
Okay,
But
Unless in our conversations with others, community leaders, something else pops
right,
up.
unless there's something else.
Right, exactly.
Unless there's something else. So it's those two or some additional collaboration with other.
Expansion purposes such as meeting.
because I mean, you do have the Sprinkle Suites at Cloverdale
Mhm.
Eagle. It's not very big, but again, I'm thinking more just from an entertainment, people want to go to a big banquet. I mean, they do it here, right? You come down to a big banquet. Instead of driving home, you get a hotel room downtown and hang out.
There is some hotel right there nearby. All right, so Marlene, any,
So here's what I sort of pulled together. This is just draft, right? Research current land purchase options and keep pulse on ongoing opportunities for expansion purposes such as meeting and banquet space.
I'd add in also sports facilities.
For multi-use sports facility. And do we add the collaborative ventures with?
And other potential opportunities. I mean, you could just leave it open-ended. Doesn't have to be.
How about just for expansion purposes? Do we even have to identify meeting, banquet, multi-use sports? Should we just say expansion
Expansion
purposes
yeah.
and leave it broad? Okay, so research current land purchase options. So that would be the current ones that we know about, right? So go deep and research those, and then keeping a pulse on ongoing opportunities for expansion purposes. Do we want to be more specific on what we're researching and how we keep a pulse on ongoing opportunities?
Chase?
And I'm gonna put that in caps.
Getting back to my point about using,
Exactly.
board members' expertise.
and that's probably always gonna be something you're thinking about, but I think we could put 2023 on that one as well.
Mhm.
It's a research, so.
I will say that, so kind of a side note, but we recently went to Houston and they have a children's museum down there that is massive. And we went there and holy cow. And Faisal, we come back and my husband Faisal, he's like, could you guys build one of those? And I'm like, technically, probably, so he's twisting my arm for a children's museum in Boise.
All right. Let's talk about the coalition group, formalizing, I don't know how you want to word that, or Pat, what might be a good vision for you in regards to who needs to be part of this group of decision makers that are proactively, for the purpose of being proactively identifying opportunities or partnerships, potential partnerships. Is there a particular wording that you'd like to do, and is it actually creation of it? Is it?
I think
What is an inventory of the current cooperative organizations in the valley? Do we still have Compass?
But Compass's mission is highway and roads,
Okay, what
or
are the,
bridges.
what are the others?
Tri-agency is kind of gone.
Tribe's just kind of gone. And Valley Ride is its own thing.
There's a mayor's coalition, gets together supposedly monthly.
That's all the mayors.
Right. And there's the private people that elevate Boise thing, but that's,
Boise Elevated.
Boise, yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Um,
there's only like 13 of us,
Right.
so.
And then there's just all the other organizations, Rotary.
Yeah, I can't think of any other public ones.
I don't know if the chamber has any collaboration with the other chambers of commerce.
I think they do.
Meridian.
And also, the chambers have, for example, Meridian Chamber has a CEO roundtable group where they pick a person from each industry and they get together and they do exactly what we're talking about. What are you seeing? What are the challenges in business? And they just share. It's a roundtable. And maybe roundtable is the word you want to use rather than coalition is.
Yeah.
And we're very deliberate and selective about who is invited into that group, right? It's people that will come and be able, they've got a good reputation, they'll be able to speak good information into the group. They don't come with a super strong agenda, personal agenda, all those things. So you could just build a community impact roundtable, community facility and impact, or come up with something that you want to call it, and then be very selective about inviting the key individual stakeholders to it. And it's a quarterly meeting or whatever you decide would be helpful.
I would think that we could limit it to public entities that have budgets, whether it be government agencies like Ada County or Boise City, or educational CWI or BSU, but entities that have a budget and the potential to stake part of that budget towards a project.
You may have a big, strong private developer that's partnering with some folks as well, or a large nonprofit, representative as well.
Hospitals.
Couldn't we?
And I mean, I think that these things work well when you create a purpose statement around what are we trying to accomplish that you're holding true, so that they don't get off track, with what you're
Couldn't
trying
we
to
use
accomplish.
the wording that we used with Tommy Alquist in developing that plan?
I'm at a loss, I guess.
For Boise East, or what do you?
Oh, so you mean for, okay, I see what you're saying.
Or Center East?
Okay. Yeah, that was pretty specific. But I think, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was, I mean, as a public-private partnership to develop, the convention center as well as, the Clearwater. But I mean, that's where I'm not clear if, when we reach out, I mean, it's real easy to reach out to the mayor of Eagle and say, hey, I understand you're looking to develop a sports park. Can I come out and meet with somebody in your office and talk about that? I'm not clear, I guess, on how you invite the city of Eagle, the city of Meridian, Ada County.
Have a breakfast for them.
Yeah, I think it's a.
But help me with the topic. I mean, the trade agency group was pretty focused. I mean, when we got together, there was a purpose there at the time. I guess
I mean, I think it could be kind of like your roundtable. It's like, I'd like to hear what the city of
What's
Eagle
going on.
is. Yeah, what's going on? What are you doing? What are you looking for?
What are you guys
What are your
thinking about?
problems?
Have you been presented any opportunities
Right.
that
take
we
the
can
lead
work
on it,
together
I
on?
think it'd be
Right.
great.
Because I mean,
That's
it
it
may
for
come
us.
out that, gosh, the city of Eagle and the Garden City have both been looking at doing a sports park and they didn't know it.
Right.
And it'd be like, okay, maybe we should talk about that.
Opportunities you have had to say no to? I
Public
envision,
facilities that aren't government buildings, basically. Is that essentially the scope of it? Is like, anything but building your own city hall or something is kind of the subject matter.
Mhm.
Whatever the other
Yeah.
stuff
That
is.
falls
they
under
do.
that mission statement of
I mean,
community good and
you know.
economic impact.
Well, is this considered a state building?
No,
Well, it isn't.
Not a state building.
it's,
We're a state entity,
we are our own municipality.
but we're still, but
It's not state owned, it's municipality owned, which is us, which is the district owned. The district
The
building,
taxation district, sewers.
just like the aquatics facilities at district.
I mean, it's a
building,
public
right?
building.
Public building.
that's,
But since we're a quasi-state agency,
But it's
We're
like-
our own municipality, so.
It's like the city of Boise.
Yeah.
The state doesn't own city buildings, right? So I mean, it's totally self-serving, because, we would want to know what other projects we could participate in.
yeah, and another group that I participate that falls in this same category is there's a group of local corporate contribution folks. So these are foundation chairs, the community relations manager of the big corporations, whoever's making decisions around where they're going to give funding to in the community. Get together once a month and have a confidential meeting that says, you know what, we got a request to give this much money for this capital campaign for Salvation Army. We can only do this much. We are interested. Is there anyone else here that would be interested in collaborating together? And sometimes the conversation is, this doesn't fit our mission, our pillars are this, but is there anyone else in the room that's passionate about youth leadership that we can pass this on to, that maybe they never even got the proposal?
Right.
So it's that concept of getting people together and just sharing, what do you know? What are opportunities that have come your way? What do you need? What are you looking for that someone might be interested in?
Because I mean, another example would be, kind of Boise State, wanting to build their own stadium, and then, they were talking about the other stadium, and it's like, does 2 stadiums in Boise make sense? Not really. So, I know those conversations are happening. I don't know why it's split out, but something like that, to where we don't end up with 2 of the same thing when we could have just had one better one.
Right.
I belong to a CFO group that it has CUNA, Caldwell, Nampa, Eagle, ACHD, us, City of Boise, Ada County. And that's what we meet once a quarter. And it's just to talk about things like, what are we seeing? And just to brainstorm and talk about things that we see at the CFO level.
And I mean, a foundation example is Albertsons Foundation, Mission 43. I hear they're building a big facility out in Harris Ranch. May or may not include a pool. Right. Maybe that could have been a conversation we would have had with them, with the aquatics facility, on how we incorporate their needs for their veterans, stuff like that, to where maybe we could have come to a better result. Maybe they could have kicked in some money.
Right. And I think the positive PR from this and the knowledge about the Boise Auditorium District with key leaders in our community will have its own positive
And I would
impact as
think
well.
that it's highly needed. I mean, I think everybody kind of operates in these silos, and being able to even just have 2 people, from different, where we're not involved, it'd be great
Right.
if they match up and say, hey, we can help out with that.
But we have to remind ourselves that we're restricted to within our boundaries.
We are, but they may have, it's all
But
about.
could we invest outside of the boundary?
We can't, unless we create a joint powers agreement with other entities.
And that's where I don't think it would make sense to invite Nampa. Probably for, us, that probably doesn't make sense. I mean, you could go to Eagle and Meridian, because we do have parts of their
But for
cities in
example,
our district.
If Meridian created their own auditorium district, we could then create a joint powers agreement with Meridian, and then we could partner with them, and they could partner with us on either of our 2 areas. So that would theoretically be possible.
I have a question on intent with these goals. So I've drafted a draft goal statement for what we're talking about right now. Do we want to go another level and actually write some strategies around how to implement that goal? Or is that for another meeting? Is that another conversation? Or do we want to incorporate that into
Is
the
that-
work we're doing here?
Is that something the staff has typically taken and built out, or is that something you've actually built out in your planning sessions?
Can you give me an example?
Well, as we're talking right here, we're talking about strategies. So if the goal is establish a roundtable collaboration of decision makers for the purpose of proactively identifying plans, opportunities, and potential partnerships. And now we're listing the different agencies that we might invite into this conversation. That's the strategy on how we're going to achieve this goal. Do we want that to be part of this document, or will that be taken offline?
I think we should probably take that offline.
Yeah.
So the goal then, as I've drafted it, is establish a roundtable collaboration of decision makers for the purpose of proactively identifying plans, opportunities, and potential partnerships. Does that sound good for now as a draft? Everyone will receive this and fine tune it later, but okay, great. I just wanted to clarify.
That sound good?
Plans, opportunities, and potential partnerships to develop public gathering spaces.
That's what I was trying to think how you could tie it back to that economic impact and
That's
community
the
engagement.
vision statement right there, right? We're to be the community's partner premier provider of public gathering places. So do we need to end it with that being the purpose of the getting people together?
Identifying Public. Collaborative.
Well, I guess except that if we're doing the, does that still work if we're doing the sports thing?
Mhm.
Okay, cool.
Because it would be community engagement,
Ah,
economic
okay,
impact.
got it.
So then the actual goal is not just to establish the roundtable collaboration. It's to ensure that whatever comes out of that work is for the community benefit,
Or the purpose of.
economic
for the purpose of community benefit.
Establishing community gathering places, maybe.
There we go, okay.
And so my recommendation is when we get done with this, we'll get all this information to Pat and Kristen. You'll look at that. You may come back with a recommendation. Hey, let's tweak this goal to be this. So you'll approve the final of this plan, I imagine, at your next meeting. All right. Pat, do you want to, the Eagle Project, does this a separate goal for that, or does that kind of fall in?
I think it could probably fall under
Okay.
reaching out to people.
Whatever our thing was.
Whatever word you want to stick with it. Eagle, if you want to, touch base with Wally, who owns the, just a Block 22, just kind of re-engaging those conversations with these folks. Also, having some conversations with potential expansion around here.
Mhm.
And with a hotel, doing some convention space within a hotel. So continuing those conversations, I think those kind of all help identify opportunities.
All right, so I'm looking at this list. What are some additional objectives and goals that we want to make sure we include in here? How about just the hotel room availability on a broader scale? Some of that we talked about could be data collection.
Research viability.
Mhm.
I mean, if somebody, if a hotel person says, well, this pencils out and it doesn't make sense, then we have our answer. I don't know.
I mean, is it part of your thing you just mentioned, which said
But touching base with people.
reaching out to people around here?
Talking to people about things. Super broad.
So research viability of
With that would be hotel
room
Mhm. Hotel
availability.
and convention
or
space. yeah.
Sources.
I mean, heck, maybe we can convince Block 22 to knock it down and build
I'm
a big
gonna see a
one there.
1,000-room hotel downtown. It'd be cool. When I came back here in 1985, it was just parking lots.
Time machine would be nice. Let's go buy it all.
It was a very small one, but it was kind of a to-do item, and that's build your annual board training. You could just add that. It's like I said, it's a pretty small one to knock out, but build annual board training curriculum or something like that.
Another objective would be to maintain financial stability.
Is that that can lead to some great discussion about here's our tolerance level, here's what we're willing to, here's what we all agree that is important that we have reserves at this much. It could lead to how do you all feel about an objective around financial strength and safety and soundness as a separate objective? Or do you kind of naturally just do that as part of each discussion?
How would it help with some of the thought that you had earlier about we have 23 million in the bank and what are we doing with it? Would it help if we put a number to what that refinancing or what that debt buy down would be in 2026, just as a number that you could always fall back on and say, you know, if we want to buy down debt, it's going to cost us 15 million to buy down debt in 2026. Would that help to have an actual number put to that?
I
It's not
think,
helping the community.
yeah, every meeting certainly focuses on it. I was gonna ask you earlier, how far out is our cash plan now? We know what cash we would have 5 years from now if we did nothing.
Yes,
Do you know that number offhand?
I was building out the plan the other day and I got out to year 3. I can't remember, Jody.
I think a cash plan makes sense. And the variables. But the baseline is, if we have no major capital project from now for 5 years, what sort of cash are we going to accumulate? And then what might we do with it in the interim, including pay down debt?
I mean, it's fairly simple, right? If we,
And then the link is bonding capacity.
if we bring in $9 million a year and it takes $6 million to fund the center, you're looking at $3 million a year, right? So you'll have another 15 million.
Another
in 5
15
years.
million.
And then, you know, so you've got your 23 plus your 15. And then but then you've got some
And
of
then
our
the
large,
other column would be bonding capacity.
when we have,
Because as your cash increases, obviously your bonding capacity.
actually, our bonding capacity increases based on tax revenue. It's the lowest they use the lowest of a 3-year for when they calculate debt service.
So what's considered tax revenue? Just the.
The hotel.
Hotel room debts, yep.
So you could easily create a strategy around create cash flow.
And we have, you know, you look at the money, that's what we are trying to show in that dashboard that we put up in the ED report is showing, yes, we have this much money, but we have a stabilization fund of 6 million. We have a lease payment reserve of 250,000, which is minor, right? And then we have some of the larger capital projects that are coming up for the center, like the ceiling. And just trying to show then, although we have 23 million, how much is really available?
Do you have that number?
It was like, I think last month, or the one ED report that's coming out was 3 million
3?
after all the deductions.
5-year projection or whatever the right number is, seems to me appropriate for a strategic plan. So that we can this time next year say, yep, we're plus 3 million or we're plus 2 million, what happens? And debt capacity and you have a forecast for tax revenue. Like when this new hotel comes on, you add some.
There's some arm wrestling that's taking place between the director of finance and the executive director.
Well, you know, I think one of the reasons the board is interested in that is because we have a good finance team and they're paid to be conservative. And we're paid to be aggressive.
So I drafted what I think might be a goal here.
Okay.
Develop a 5-year financial forecast and cash flow strategy to ensure financial solvency.
Well, it's to understand our capacity, our opportunity.
There you go.
Okay,
I think that's, yeah, that's almost better
to
to understand
understand.
financial capacity.
Great. Develop a 5-year financial forecast and cash flow strategy to understand financial capacity.
And as the only thing from the lawyer perspective is that if we are ever thinking about paying down debt, if we do pay down debt, it's really hard for us to borrow money. So it's not a bad idea to leave our debt outstanding and have more cash to the balance sheet, just because given our constitutional and statutory limitations, it's really a pain because we have to go through that whole annual appropriation lease thing, which is annoying.
Well, and you gotta deal with Jim Walker,
Yes.
who would never spend a buck if he could borrow it.
What's our interest rate?
Oh, it was, I think, 4.2.
Yeah, it's not payable until 2026, right? So, and at that point, we have the ability to look at refunding or whatever it is we want to
Debt's one of the best tools you have. It's our friend, right? If I take out a loan, I don't want to turn around and pay that thing back. I just got the money, had to jump through the hoops to do it, so.
And with inflation above your interest rate, you're actually.
Pat, is there anything on the technology side that's a need? Evolving technology,
Every year,
just
I
part of
mean,
your capital plan?
it's part
Okay,
of our capital.
okay, so
capital
no
program.
need for it,
So, technology right now is on a 3-year cycle.
okay? Okay, how about people, HR, culture? I think sounds like you've done a great job there. Is there any that really didn't surface through any of your comments in regards to a need? Or certainly everyone's adjusting to the uncertainty about what does post-COVID look like, but no need for anything there.
We have a pretty robust benefit plan and we fund it through the operations of the center.
That's good.
So it's part of that
Mhm.
$6 million that we transferred.
Anything that's like on your to-do list that really needs to hit the goal or objective list?
You know, we've talked about succession planning. Everything else is pretty much part of what we do, so.
And I don't think there's anything about talked about the political threats and all that stuff. I don't think there's anything to do there, is there? I mean, it kind of.
It's monitoring to
We
make
just-
sure.
We just hope Sullivan and Reed Brugger are doing their thing, so, yeah.
Well, yeah, it's just, again, it goes back to that conversation about making sure that the decisions that we make keep us off the radar.
Yeah.
How's your recruiting program on the Boise State? I know you said at one time you were hoping to hire 20 or 30.
We're looking for about 40, 30 of them, food and beverage, about 10 of them operationally. We've got a incentive right now, and as the students come back onto campus, we're really hoping that incentive bonus is going to bring a big portion of that back. We're going to pay attention. It goes through September 15th, I believe, through the middle of September. And we're going to evaluate where our numbers are at that point, if we need to get more aggressive or if it did its job. But really, these next 2 weeks, as people are starting to come back on campus, is going to be the first sign of whether that's going to be super effective or we're going to have to go a little more aggressive.
There's a job fair next week on campus. And in addition to our HR folks, we've got four folks, in fact, Ben. He's going to be on campus as a recruiter for us, and then 3 other students, student workers who they can speak to our culture and to what we do better than the managers can. So we've got four total that are part of the team here on campus. So they're part of our recruitment. And then, as Cody alluded to, the recruitment bonus goes for whoever brings their friends, family, relatives on after they hit 240 hours, there's a $300 bonus for both the person who got recruited as well as who did the recruiting. So, and that's like we've said, that we're putting a lot of eggs in the BSU basket.
You guys do CWI too? I mean, I don't even know, I mean, they don't really have
It's just
kind of
the, yeah,
the same kind of campus, but
And then we actually, in fact, the server that's taking care of us today, Gracie, she graduated from high school this last spring. And she's referred like, I don't know, six or seven of her friends that work with. One of them just moved to Nampa. She was telling me this morning that one of her friends just moved to Nampa, so she doesn't have a ride to work, so she's not working with us anymore. But
Do we get anything out of Life's Kitchen?
well, Sam Peck, who's in the kitchen right now, he came out of that program. We haven't had anybody of recent that I'm aware of.
interestingly enough, culinary, we're actually doing, we protected the culinary team pretty heavily throughout COVID because of that's our bread and butter from a revenue standpoint and the ability to service our clients that we had contracts on the books for. So when we protected culinary, we're not seeing, that was one of my first departments that fully staffed up post-COVID was culinary. So.
Do we do anything with the refugee community?
Yeah, they asked, so we've reached out to IRC, the International Refugee Community, or whatever the IRC stands for. From what I've understood, at least from Megan, our HR specialist, that they just haven't been as responsive as they were hoping. There's some challenges with obviously translation. So having somebody on your staff, and I know that's what I'm talking to Kathy Pigeon at the Riverside, she was struggling with that, but she had somebody that could actually speak and kind of able to be translating for a lot of the other staff there.
Right.
We've even talked about hiring somebody bilingual that could help with that. So yes, that's been on our radar as well.
We've reached out to the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce out in Nampa to see if we could get on the Spanish speaking folks that might be new to the area.
I think it's enough of a issue going forward over the next 5 years that we can put in an HR goal. And obviously, management is well on their way, but it would be worthwhile to have.
It
in
is the
writing
topic.
Those touch points,
Recruitment
immigrants,
is the topic in
ESU,
business today, so.
And it's just,
Life's Kitchen.
it's a unique environment that we had some of these challenges prior to COVID, but as students are even with their in classes, it's the daytime, weekday type of services that if we want to do a large like lunch for literacy or something like that, staffing those midday tend to be a bit of a challenge for us right now. So that's what we're really with the incentives. We've kind of put some hot date pieces to that where they have to work a certain number of hot dates plus the 240 hours. So it really fills in our fall because we got to protect what we've got on the books currently. Again, I'm really hopeful and knock on wood on this one, but by the time we get into 23, some of the things are going to change a little bit and lighten up on that staffing shortage. But again, that's more hopeful.
Just attended a winning the war on talent session about a week ago, and the speaker was actually just showing the mere statistics of who's in the labor market, and the numbers are going to work against us on top of everything. So yeah, it's definitely a top of mind conversation and topic around this.
And every time we've gotten a little more aggressive with pay, the city of Boise just bumped their minimum wage up to just 16 cents past what we were starting out at minimum. And they did that a month after or so what we did. So everybody's kind of reacting to everybody else's bumps. And so Amazon,
16
Is that
cents.
starting pay?
Yeah, $16. The starting wage at the city now is 16, I think it's 16.15 or 16.16. And ours is 16.
okay.
Denny's by the airport is currently advertising for $25 an hour per server, and
tell our servers.
yeah, of course, who knows, they even are, there, but the other thing is, I just read a recent survey that said why people are leaving jobs, is still the number one reason is because of supervisors. Which that's been a reason for a long, long time. So that might feed into, we're talking about leadership development, training and board training, is that might all feed into that. Is there additional leadership development programs to feed in? Because the article went on to say about it's still really critically important to pay attention to who you're promoting that are leading people in today's environment.
We use a merit bin for the majority of our in-house staff and leadership. In fact, there's one going on as we speak.
That's great. Marlene, maybe share a little of what you came up with and to address both board training and succession planning.
So I pulled together a goal that says, establish a formal succession plan and long-term leadership development goals with annual board training and clarification of roles and responsibilities. Now, this is for this board, not for your staff. Because it sounds like you have a succession plan in place for staff, but it's something we might be missing here. So how does that sound? Do you want me to read that again?
Well, the succession plan for the board is elections. We're elected.
Every single person on the board is elected. So do you have documentation, though, that helps with that transition process when new people are elected into roles? How is that knowledge transferred?
Maybe it's not as much succession plan as just
Pipeline.
leadership.
That's what I was gonna say about
Roles
the
and
chair position or.
Yeah.
Position transitions maybe, or something like that.
Yeah, well, and there's also the, how did Chase come on the board? Well, he was in communication with
He was elected,
Peter,
but he was
Right.
elected, but Jody was appointed.
right? So there are.
I was
appointments.
elected by nobody. My name didn't actually make it to a ballot.
You know.
Fought off.
Won your election, that's all you gotta say, you won your election.
But it worked. I had been told this was a dysfunctional board and hundreds of people came to meetings. People were suing each other all the time. And, ever since Kristen's been the chair, we lost Peter Oliver, who was a big loss because he was our developer and our lead on the east. And we picked up Chase and
Yep.
Chris, the chair went out and found him. And Mike, I took over basically for Steve Birch. We have very similar business backgrounds. He was HP, right? I was trust judge. And so I think we're managing that pretty well at the board level.
Mhm. And, Hi and I are up next year, so it's some of that is conversations of who else would be a good fit, for the board.
But we do have some documentation for new board members that Pat puts them through an orientation.
Yeah, I think
Policies and
Chase referred to, was glad he got that training.
What did you do
and I
for
think-
orientation for Chase?
We threw him to the fire.
Because you didn't do what he did to me, did you?
There's two onboarding
We,
sessions.
we had, Mike and I did orientation for him,
And it was the book of legal documents.
pretty much. Well, that and then.
Wasn't it fascinating?
It was great.
Well,
Yeah,
well, we had our.
finance and legal all in one session. Yeah, that's good.
Didn't we have our training by Brian Kane?
That's great.
So what initiative would you like around board training, board succession planning? Is this good? Would you like us to dial that more general?
my bias on particularly new board training is it not be so legal focused.
Right.
We have constraints, as Hyde points out, but we also have a team that
And that's why we have Mike.
works on that.
Yeah, so you could build a new curriculum
And I think of orientation more around what we do,
culture.
identifying opportunities, the stuff we've been talking about today.
Yeah, so maybe enhance board orientation and training.
And, we certainly wouldn't want to have an election where nobody filed,
Right.
so that's, I guess, where board recruitment
Mm-hmm.
would come into
Right.
play. I mean, you wanna,
Education and recruitment.
you wanna make sure that
What's the timeline of your reelection?
I'm up next May. I'd be done next May.
Ty is up as well.
And when are the applicants?
March timeframe?
I haven't gotten the election calendar for next year yet.
Okay, but
Sometime in March.
by next March, we know.
Yeah.
And then we have time to recruit if we need to.
Would you recruit people to run against incumbents?
No, I don't think so. Not this board.
I don't
Would
know.
you move to
Jody,
fill
maybe.
I happen to know Judy Peavy-Dur is available
Yeah.
if there's a vacancy.
All right.
Well,
Yeah,
then
sounds
while
good.
we're here in our open meeting.
Guys, yeah. All right, let's tackle this and then,
Okay.
Jody's worried.
Pulling from all of these sort of different conversations and ideas, enhance board orientation, training, and transition planning with leadership development, education, and recruitment strategies.
good,
Okay.
good job.
Okay.
You didn't put the kitchen sink in there.
I know,
I
right?
know.
Oh my God. And be nice to everyone. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's right. All right, Pat, anything else that's important we get in an objective or goal?
Pay the board more.
Yeah, that's true.
That's Kristen to running it.
All right. we have
Jody
about-
phrased it as her re-election.
Yeah.
Sandwiches are sitting outside waiting, so
Sounds great, yeah, and just think about, is there anything else we want to make sure that we're bringing to the table? I'll leave this up.
Jim, anything on your end?
No, I think it's pretty well covered.
You delivering a sandwich to him?
No.
Sorry, Jim. I'll send Jimmy John's over to you.
And then Pat and the team, the staff, just think about time, talent, expertise, financial. Is there expertise that's going to be needed? Is there any additional that you think isn't big enough that you would definitely want the board's knowledge and support about?
I think we deal with that through the budget
Yes.
and we add positions and the board supports the budget. Or not.
Yeah, you don't have, oftentimes we have this long list and then we're trying to dial it down about reasonableness. So you don't have that major challenge right now, which is a good thing.
in the makeup of the board is such that, Jody mentioned it earlier that we do take a very conservative approach to our budgeting. And traditionally, we've done better on the revenues and controlled expenses better than the budget. So hopefully that will continue. That's our strategy anyway. But the board has been very, very supportive of the decisions that we make and the budgets that we put in. Not without questions for sure, but again, we appreciate from the operational side the support that we have from the board as we look at the facilities and what the expectations are of our guests and when meeting planners come in here and say that they're in newer buildings that don't look this good. And I think that, again, our job is to try to make sure that we maximize what we're given and then make sure that we keep our constituents happy and our guests happy. So it's been, again, I think the board does a good job of challenging us on what we're doing and how we're doing it, but also supports the efforts because, again, it's been a good relationship with us in the community. So,
I mean, I was gonna say, adding to that, you guys protected our service quality and it's up there on the list as well through that service quality that you guys made decisions to protect staff. That has significantly, I can say it firsthand, with our clients coming back, they're seeing familiar faces, they're not dealing with new people. So in a roundabout way, you guys are very much protecting our culture and our service quality by supporting our budgets.
To give you an idea of how the board works, I don't think, other than maybe last month, we've had anything but a unanimous vote for approval. I mean, I can't think of any. So it's pretty,
So that means you're getting good information, you're getting enough to make educated decisions, you're well-informed, you're engaged, and you're communicating, with that as well. I think that those are things. Sometimes it can be, though, all guest boards sometimes can be that people aren't sharing what they're thinking. I'm not sensing that at all with this group. You have a really good conversation going on and everyone's providing input. But that's, yeah, I think you're probably a little more strategic than an average board. And so you're thinking through, is this really the right thing to even bring to the board? And so I think you're making some good decisions about what surfaces in a board meeting as well.
Well, even when there's dissension, which isn't all that often, but even when there is, from my working with all 5 bosses, I mean, it's nice because they can have differing views, and they do, but at the end of the meeting, nobody's taking anything personal, and they keep it at a high level and very professional. And so again, even if there's a disagreement, it's like, okay, and at the end of the day, it's about the issue, not about the person.
Right, and I'll tell you in some of my board assessment work that I do in the interviews, oftentimes there's an elephant in the room that surfaces. I didn't pick up anything like that. So it's nice when you're obviously bringing things to the table and you're communicating well. And you all rated yourself pretty high in regards to the effectiveness of your overall board. So that's great. All right, so help yourself to sandwiches. One thing to think about that we didn't touch on is it working really well, the process where people submit ideas or proposals, is that process working well? Is there anything that needs tweaked there in regards to how you're receiving new ideas from the community or potential collaborative partnerships? That might be something just to think about. That's working well, great. But if there is something there that needs enhanced, that's always an opportunity too. All right, any other comments? Listen.
And kind of, there's plenty for you. I mean, we included
Okay,
you guys.
great, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I did. I was able to get an appointment at 9:15 on Monday, but. But anyway, you didn't use my.
That was probably just kind of all fell off our keys radar, so.
Okay, that looked good. This is pretty common when I looked at your last plans. Digging in. So. You have quite the history.
Oh, yeah. I was here in the good old days.
Yeah. Quite the journey.
There's even a picture of me and the whole board that was used in the Boise Weekly.
Yeah,
Somebody choking me. I was the chair at that time.
it was a joke though.
No,
Somebody actually was trying
well,
to choke
it
you.
was a cartoon.
Oh,
It
okay.
was just somebody grabbing me by the throat. We won't mention her name.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard some interesting stories.
Gotta bring a Coke to the next one of these.
I It's a little
I
chilly.
have learned convention centers are always full.
Right.
They want you to stay awake.
Yeah. She's good.
Wait, oh, there's a teacher.
Yeah, I anticipate this being cold. I'm wearing multiple layers under.
Uh-huh.
I can peel off, but I can't add to.
Yeah. So Cody, how long have you been with the district?
17 years November.
Oh, a long time now. You've seen it through a lot of changes too.
Yes. Sounds weird to say that out loud, 17 years or 16 years.
That's not much longer than that.
What's that?
That's not,
It's got me like a couple years, yeah. A little over 20, so.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Connie.
You're welcome. I put the goals up here. What Marlene so fabulous crafted. So definitely take a glance at them and you'll receive these at a later time. But kind of where we'll at least start with.
Thank you all.
Take care, Jody.
Yeah, outside and warm up.
yeah, right.
You wanna come back?
So we're still live streaming, I think, or recording,
I think so. We are still recording, correct?
and the meeting is still in.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
This is the real riveting point to listen to.
Yeah,
all the
Public
chewing,
meeting. Really good. For lunch. To attend, like having the.
Yeah,
I mean,
so, really, maybe some key takeaways is nice, just overall, what's your key takeaway from your future, the opportunities you have against, coming up for you. And it's always nice to kind of go around and just give your general perspective of this time together and what you're excited about. Maybe we'll have Kristen kick us off.
I'm excited about the roundtable.
Mhm.
I think it'd be really interesting to see what falls out from that and the collaboration that could happen.
You'll learn things probably that you just would have never stumbled onto.
I think this is a good time to get together and just, I don't know, I can't even remember how long I've actually been on the board yet, but being able to, all of us get together and chat and hear different ideas that weren't necessarily on the agenda for the meetings that we normally go through. That was good.
For me, just be the excitement of what's next for Boise, for next year. So it's very cool to see this conversation happen at a higher level and kind of knowing also what we're ready for as far as the convention market or possibly a sports facility. I think that Boise is kind of primed and ready for something like that in the future. So happy to see that we're having those conversations now. And I think Boise is, when I go to I was explaining this on the phone, as I go around to different conventions, larger cities, it always baffles me to see how they developed a big stadium, a football stadium, a baseball stadium, a convention center, all on their corner downtown. They're also walkable. And what is that vision to get Boise there someday in 50 years or however long it takes? I don't want to see us have all the problems of a big city, but seeing some of those amenities for the community would be outstanding. So.
Get some ideas and then make it your own. How about you, Anne Marie?
She's like, I didn't get the question.
What was the question? Any key takeaways for the day?
I think it's.
One thing I'll share is that I am excited to hear our board's willingness to look maybe beyond some of our traditional project ideas or areas. You know, it seems like the swim facility was kind of outside of the area that we normally think about tackling a project, and to have the board willing to look to the far reaches of our district is impressive to me, because for so long we've just been focused on the downtown core, and I think we can entertain projects that are going to be, you know, the most beneficial to our stakeholders by looking everywhere, not just focused on where CCDC has a district or it's something that's a neighboring property, that we're willing to look throughout and tackle what's going to be the best project, best bang for the buck.
It's really coming together to work on the business rather than in the business. You can just get so mundane sometimes that sometimes it's just really good to take a step back and just step up and look more broader at it. Yeah, very good. Anne Marie, any additional?
For me, it's obviously the 5-year forecast. And then just looking at the land purchases and the things that are available for us to participate in, and look and having some goals to look to the future, where we come into a board meeting and we do the ED report, which is focused on last month, but to be able to be focusing on the future and where are we going, and where are we going as a regional market as well. And because that's always one of the concerns I have, is what happens, obviously, is one of the threats, was if a big motel or hotel comes in with 100,000 square feet, and how does that jeopardize the district?
Yeah, very good.
Or actually, it's the Boise Center, because the district would certainly get their hotel tax.
How about you, Pat?
I think that, you know, particularly with COVID and the impacts that it had, and how it just stopped everything, being able to get together with the board doing what we're doing and beginning to look forward again, rather than being sort of stalled where we were. And so, I mean, the future is still uncertain, but I think getting back on track to where we were, and being able to look at opportunities. So I think you just be able to get the board together again. It's really positive.
Right. Yeah, very good. And we're so bummed that Jim wasn't able to join us, but I was there with you a month ago, so.
My second time.
Mine was at the very end of a trip as well, coming back from Canada.